Absinthe-Minded, a mafia romantic comedy. Bourbon Street Bad Boys Club, Book 1. Written by Kathryn M. Hearst. Narrated by Stella Hunter and Aaron Shedlock. Chapter 1. Gabe. This has to be a mistake. I reread the results of the paternity test and glanced from the newborn to the apparent mother of my child. Sure, I'd gone with her to do a cheek swab a few weeks back, but I never thought anything would come of it. In the time it took me to open my front door and scan the page, my swanky French Quarter townhouse had become the set of the Maury Povich show. Gabe Marchionni, you are the father. I'd always wanted kids, but not like this. Not now, and not with... Let's just say, I'd always imagined I'd have them with Maggie, the one who got away. Everything you need is in the bag. Chantal tossed her hair over her shoulder. Bye, Gabe. Have a nice life. That's it? You're leaving? I motioned to the sleeping infant. She's too young. She needs a mom. I have no idea what to do with an infant. Take her to your parents. They'll be thrilled. The woman I dated a few times, almost a year ago, turned on her stilettos. I have to be at the cruise terminal in 15 minutes. Chantal, wait. You can't be serious. I stalked after her, but remembered the baby on my doorstep. Unlike my ex, whatever the hell she was, I wouldn't leave a child alone. At least stay long enough to tell me how to take care of her. I wrote instructions. She waved without bothering to turn her head. My every instinct screamed for me to go after her. Chantal had abandoned her child, our child, my child. What the hell was I going to do with an infant? I sank to the top step and sat beside the sleeping infant. Head in my hands, I ran through my options and came up empty. One thing was clear. I needed help, and I'd need more than books with titles like Diaper Changing 101 and Infant Care for Morons. God help you. Looks like you're stuck with me. She was a cute little thing, all bundled up in pink blankets. Hints of dark hair peeked out from beneath her baby beanie, and the cool New Orleans winter air had turned her cheeks and button nose rosy. What's your name? The baby didn't reply. I pulled an envelope from the diaper bag. Chantal had, in fact, left instructions. Feed and change her when she cries. That's all she'd written. I resisted the urge to shout obscenities and scan the birth certificate. My throat tightened. She named you after me? Looking back, I never should have dated Chantal. She was mixed up in a business deal gone wrong with my father. Our relationship had much more to do with physical attraction and my need to rebel than real feelings. I'd ended things when she tripped my crazy girl warning system, but nothing could prepare me for this. Not only had she hidden her pregnancy, she'd named our daughter after me, Gabriella Antoinette Dubois. How about we call you Ella? I brushed my fingertips over her head, and my heart rate increased to an allegro. I'm a father. Mother Mary, give me strength. My thoughts drifted to a woman I hadn't seen in over a year and hadn't kissed in 4. A woman whose heart I'd broken. Sure, I'd had my reasons, and yes, I'd behaved like a jackass, but I'd always believed we'd end up together. What would Maggie think about Ella? I ran my finger over the baby's cheek. She turned her head and opened her mouth as if to nurse. I bet she'd love you. Does she love me? Not so much. 5 minutes later, I put an end to my wallowing and got my ass in gear. I knew what I had to do, even if it cost me more than my pride. I grabbed my keys and my kid and strapped the car seat into the back of my Porsche. Ready to meet your grandparents? Ella stared at me with a stoic expression that reminded me of my father. If she grew up to be half as much of a pain in the ass as my old man, I was in serious trouble. You have nothing to worry about. They'll love you. It's me they're going to kill. I tugged at her seatbelt to make sure it had locked and slid into the driver's seat. I could only guess how my parents would react, though I doubted they'd throw me a party. My father had given me and my brother the same lecture 100 times. We're Catholic. No sex before marriage, but boys will be boys. You screw up and make a kid, you man up and get married. Hell, my mother hated my brother Joe's girlfriend, an Irish girl from the wrong side of town. But she'd planned the wedding after he'd knocked Rebecca up. Good thing Chantal left town. I shuddered at the thought of spending the rest of my life with a woman like her. I drummed a beat on the steering wheel and considered the best way to approach my folks with the news. They'd never turn away their own flesh and blood, but that didn't mean they wouldn't make my life a living hell. and they had the means to do it. Despite the fact I'd recently celebrated my 30th birthday, my parents had me by the short and curlies. They were old-school Sicilian, which meant they controlled nearly every aspect of mine and my brothers' lives, either by guilt or their tight hold on the purse strings. It also meant that the family business went the way of the Capones and Gambinos. Shocking to most, but I'd grown up in it. Yep, my surprise baby was a mafia princess. "You okay back there?" I glanced in the rear view to make sure the car seat/carrier hadn't fallen over. Not for nothing, but rear-facing car seats suck. How am I supposed to know if she turns blue or something if I can't see her? With the French Quarter behind me, I turned on St. Charles Street and headed for the Garden District. Driving up Chestnut Street gave me the same sinking feeling as climbing the first hill on a roller coaster. Once I turned into Casa de Marchionni, my stomach would be in my throat until the ride ended. Only this would last the rest of my freaking life. How in the hell did I knock her up? I replayed mine and Chantal's sexcapades. The woman was wild, too wild for me to have risked going in bare. Nope, I was sure I'd suited up, but then how had I won the less than 1% condom failure lottery? I parked and hurried to the passenger's side of the Porsche. With the front seat moved as far forward as it would go, I squeezed my upper body into the tight space, but couldn't quite reach the release button. I lifted to the balls of my feet and attempted to close the distance. My foot slipped, and all hell broke loose. I fell. The hard plastic handle in the car seat hit me in the solar plexus. The baby wailed, and for some ungodly reason, the anti-theft alarm went off. Ella's carrier laced over one arm and the diaper bag on my shoulder, I limped through the front door into the pristine white marble of my childhood. "Ma?" I called from the foyer. "Pops, anyone home?" Footsteps approached from the direction of the kitchen, too quick to be my mother. I turned and smiled at Hildy, the woman who had raised me and my 5 brothers. Miss Hildy. I drew her frail body into a half embrace. Still as pretty as ever. She arched a brow at the screaming infant. "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd be looking after a baby, and a loud one at that. Where are her parents?" "She's mine." White showed all the way around her eyes. "Lord have mercy. Your mama didn't tell me you had a daughter?" I leaned closer to keep my voice down. "She doesn't know." "I'll go get her for you. Go into the parlor and wait." The woman gave the baby one last longing look and hurried out of the room. I knew self-preservation when I saw it. Miss Hildy would keep her distance until the fireworks ended. I crouched and attempted to free Ella from the straps and buckles of her carrier. Tried and failed. Seriously, who the hell makes these things? Houdini? Evelyn Marchionni stood in the entryway of the parlor dressed in white capris and a matching sweater. She looked as magazine-perfect as the rest of the house. I forced a smile, but she stared at the baby and made the sign of the cross. A hell of a thing to do after laying eyes on her granddaughter for the first time. "Hi, Ma. This is Gabriella Antoinette." I stood and motioned to the baby. "Ella, this is your grandmother." Evelyn took a quick step back, as if trying to keep herself from toppling over. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. No need to add more fuel to the fire. Instead, I grinned and waited for her to finish with the dramatics. "Give me that baby." She held her arms out and tapped her foot. "I would, but I can't get her out of this thing." Evelyn sighed the sigh mothers have used to condemn their children since Eve gave birth to Cain and Abel. She shook her head, knelt beside the carrier, and extracted my daughter. The baby on her shoulder, she smacked the back of my head. "Ow! Jesus!" "Andy takes the Lord's name in vain." Evelyn's Italian accent thickened her words and ruined the illusion of a dainty Southern belle. "She's at least a month old, and you just now bring her to me? Are you nuts? Is she yours?" "Yeah, she's mine. I only found out about her an hour ago." "Of course she's yours. Look at those eyes. She looks like you." Cooing over the baby, she reached over and smacked me again. "Where's her mother?" "She's gone. Left Ella with me and took off." I sighed and sat on one of the stiff love seats. Evelyn glared until I squirmed. "I take it you two aren't close." I shook my head. "This is going to kill your father, you know." Her voice cracked, but it had nothing to do with the melodrama she dished out until then. This was real concern for her husband. I dreaded the day when my father left this earth. For the usual reasons, of course, but also how my life would change. "How's he doing? What are the docs saying?" "The same. He refused the chemo." She waved her hand. This girl you impregnated, dare I ask if she's Catholic? Atheist. After whispering a slew of curses in Italian, she turned her face toward the ceiling and prayed, also in Italian. You will come here and live with us. You're a good boy, but you're like your father. You can't keep it in your pants. You can't raise a child, not a little angel like this one. I got it covered, Ma. I just need a little help getting going. No way will I let a grandbaby of mine grow up in a bachelor's pad. She lowered her voice, as if we were in mixed company. It's bad enough that Guthrie girl is raising your niece and nephews. Maggie Guthrie, my brother's sister-in-law, my ex, and the love of my life. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen her since Joe and Rebecca's funerals, but I'd thought about her every damn day.
Chapter 2. Maggie. I adjusted my black jacket and fluffed my hair one last time before I pressed the Enter Conference button. Within a couple of seconds, 4 faces, including my boss, stared back at me from the monitor, and then it went blank. No, no, no. Panic wrapped its cold, hard fingers around my throat. I pressed various keys in rapid succession, checked the connection to the power cord on the laptop and the wall. Nothing. On hands and knees, I crawled under the dining room table and groaned. Someone had almost chewed the cord in half, and I knew who. I glared at the dog. Coco, what did you do? The chocolate lab lifted her head, snorted, and went back to sleep. Grabbing my phone, I dialed Marlena's cell. No answer. I tried again. Come on, Marlena. On the verge of a meltdown, I called the office on my way to the garage. Hello, this is Maggie Guthrie. I have a conference call with Marlena Dupree. I'm having technical difficulties. May I speak to her? One moment, please, the disembodied voice replied. The duct tape sat on the shelf where I'd left it. Hurrying back to the computer, I stubbed my toe on the chair and had to bite back a groan when the receptionist came back on the line. Miss Dupree isn't in her office. Would you like to leave a message? No, I know. I mean, we were on a conference call. Do you know what room she's in? No? Can you find her? She's not answering her cell. Of course. Hold music replaced the impatient voice as I dove under the table and wrapped a long strip of tape around the mangled cord. Praying to anyone who would listen, I poked my head out from beneath the table to check the monitor. Nothing. Oh, come on. I pinched the tape tighter, and the screen came to life. I banged my forehead on the table but managed to type my password into the welcome screen. What felt like an eternity later, the machine booted up, and I re-entered the virtual conference call. 4 faces stared with varying degrees of concern. Marlena, my boss, spoke first. Good morning, Maggie. Thank you for joining us. Is everything all right, dear? Yeah, sorry about that, technical difficulties. I smiled at the screen and turned my cell phone to silent beneath the table. Very well. Let's start, shall we? Ignoring the bead of sweat running down my forehead, I squared my shoulders and waited for Marlena to speak. Maggie, as you know, the mission of NOLA Society News is to inform residents and visitors of the cultural side of New Orleans. Marlena paused to allow the others on the call to nod. We loved your work when you first joined us. Loved? My throat tightened, but my plastic smile remained in place. Thank you. I love my job. Our heart goes out to you, taking on your sister's children. However, your change in circumstances has impacted your columns. Marlena sighed. Our readership isn't interested in local family-friendly events, Ted Denning, director of marketing, added. I've been thinking the same thing. In fact, I have an idea for a new piece. I lied through my teeth. My life had gone to complete shit in the previous 3 days. Not only had Ryan, the youngest of my deceased sister's children, come down with an ear infection, I'd received a court summons for yet another custody hearing. Not to mention my late rent payments and a second notice on the power bill. I desperately needed this job. I'd figure it out. There was no sense in feeling sorry for myself or asking how this had become my life. Shit happens. Even batshit crazy stuff like my sister and her husband dying and leaving me custody of their kids. Marlena's voice drew my attention back to the monitor. Maggie, at this point... Nouveau Orleans. I blurted out the first words that tumbled through my head. Excuse me? Ted narrowed his eyes. I swallowed hard. The name of my new article. Nouveau Orleans. For years, the magazine has covered debutante balls and charity events. Old money is old news. It's overdone. Why not cover the nouveau riche, the younger and sexier side of New Orleans society? Ted smirked, and the other two people on the call stared. However, Marlena's eyes brightened, and a wicked smile crossed her lips. For my part, I tried to maintain a poker face, but my heart thumped loud enough to be heard through the computer. Keep talking. Marlena steepled her fingers beneath her chin. The gears in my head spun out of control. Take the Marchionnis, for example. 5 surviving brothers, all of whom own profitable establishments in the French Quarter. Then there are the hotels and other companies outside the quarter owned by the Marchionni Corporation. They host charity events and are involved in the community, yet no one covers them. For good reason. Ted's voice rose. There have been rumors about the Marchionnis since Joe Sr. started buying failing businesses. Most folks think they're tied to the mob. People in the South loved to gossip and hated outsiders. A Sicilian family buying up half the French Quarter had sprouted as many tall tales as the old myth of vampires living in the attic at Old Ursuline Convent. Is this big enough to do a monthly piece? Marlena leaned closer to the camera. There are many young, powerful residents in New Orleans. Thank God they liked the idea. All I had to do was close the deal. My brother-in-law is the late Joe Marchionni Jr., and Gabe Marchionni is a friend of mine. The first piece will be an exposé on the Marchionni family. Each of the following months will feature a different brother. When we run out of Marchionnis, I'll move on to other young up-and-coming leaders in the city. Referring to Gabe as my friend made my chest hurt. That line about time healing all wounds was crap. I'd thought of him every single day in the 4 years since he dumped me. I don't like the name. Ted tapped his pencil to his lips. How about the Bourbon Street Bad Boys Club? I forced a smile. My best friend, Shauna, had coined the term back when I'd first met Gabe. The Marchionni's Mardi Gras Gala is always big news. We can piggyback the article off the event coverage. I love it. A little sexist, but it'll work for the Marchionnis. Marlena clapped. You'll need to research the corporation, their businesses, their community involvement, and their personal lives. I can see the photos now. Those men are seriously sexy, even Papa Joe. You have no idea. Images of skin and sweat and black 600 thread count sheets flashed through my mind. Ted glanced over his shoulder and lowered his voice. Do you think they're connected to the mob? I mean, is it safe to go snooping into their business? That's a good point. Maggie, given your relationship with the family, are you willing to spill the dirty secrets as well as the pretty ones? Marlena raised a perfectly sculpted brow. I seriously doubt they're involved in organized crime, but they wouldn't be the first to play dirty in New Orleans. Very few leaders in this city are squeaky clean. I'll write the piece as it should be written. Truthfully. My voice might have sounded strong, but my stomach roiled and threatened to return my lunch. I hadn't seen Gabe or his brother since my sister's funeral over a year before. What the heck did I just get myself into? Do the research. I want a full proposal by the end of the week. Dennis, get legal involved. We don't want to print anything too risque and lose sponsors. Ted, get with creative. Let's brand this thing. Logos, ads, the works. Marlena barked orders like Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada. The Bourbon Street Bad Boys Club. I love it. After everyone had their marching orders, I closed the laptop and walked into the bathroom in search of antacids. I didn't love my job as much as I needed it. As a freelancer, they allowed me to work from home. The small amount I took from the children's trust funds each month barely paid the bills, and not paying daycare had helped. Sure, I could use more of their money, but I hated feeling like I'd somehow profited from my sister's death. I took one look at myself in the mirror and groaned. So much for a professional appearance. My hair had drooped and my mascara had bled. One shoulder of my jacket had a white and brown smear. The substance looked suspiciously like the peanut butter and fluff sandwich I'd fed my nephew for lunch. Ryan must have wiped his hands under the table. No wonder Marlena had planned to fire me. The weight of what I'd done settled on my shoulders. While I knew for sure my sister would never marry into the mob, I hated the idea of investigating Rebecca's in-laws. Gabe was an ass, and I loathed his parents. But the rest of the bunch were good guys, even if they hadn't bothered to check on me and the kids in over a year. The alarm on my cell phone chirped, reminding me to pick up Ryan from the sitter. In another hour, the house would be full of children, backpacks to check, papers to sign, dinner to cook, baths and pajamas. I'd never thought of myself as mother material, and never imagined I'd be raising 3 children before my 26th birthday. Most times, life wasn't fair. However, I'd promised 3 children we'd make the best of a bad situation, and that's exactly what I intended to do. First things first, I needed backup, and my bestie just so happened to work for a private investigator. "I need a favor," I said the moment Shauna answered the phone. "Hello to you, too," she laughed. "I'm sorry. It's been one of those days. What can I do?" I drew a breath. "I need some help finding info on the Marchionni Corporation and the brothers." "Dare I ask why?" Marlena pulled my regular article. "I have to put together a proposal for something new this week. I'm thinking about a standing piece on new money families in New Orleans, starting with the Marchionnis." "Are you crazy?" "Probably." "I'll look into it." She hadn't mentioned Gabe, but I had a feeling she would soon enough. "Thanks, Shauna. I have to run." I smiled, despite my mood. No way. You're on your cell. Take me with you." She sucked in a breath. "Are you planning to see He Who Shall Not Be Named?" "Am I? Can I do the story without coming in contact with Gabe? The part of me who needed closure to see him and demand he tell me the real reason he ended our relationship? That I could handle. The part of me still completely and utterly in love with the big jerk was an entirely different matter. "Maggie," her voice rose. "Tell me you're not going to see him." I sighed. "I'm not going to see him." Why do I have a feeling I'm going to regret doing this? Because you love me and you worry? I do love you, but I worry because this is Gabe we're talking about. I grabbed my keys and hurried to the car. "Shoshana, this is business, not personal." "It must be if you're using my full name."
Chapter 3. Gabe. My mother showed no signs of ending her lecture any time soon. As it was, she damn near paced a rut in the travertine floor. "I don't understand what I did wrong with a lot of you. Why can't you boys find nice Italian girls to settle down with?" Evelyn patted a rhythm on Ella's diapered bottom. "At least you could find a good Catholic girl." "Ma, Rebecca was Catholic and you know it." Evelyn pursed her lips and shook her head. "Irish Catholics are hardly the same." "How is Maggie doing?" I knew better than to ask, but my curiosity had always got me into trouble. My mother's temper went from 0 to 60 in a heartbeat. German engineering had nothing on Evelyn Marchionni. "She's too young to handle 3 kids. Your father and I are taking her back to court next month. I don't know what Rebecca and Joe were thinking." She paused to do the sign of the cross after mentioning my brother's name. "Our lawyers think we'll win this time. She's 2 months late on her mortgage. What are we supposed to do? Throw our own grandchildren out on the street?" "It's not a mortgage. You gave Joe and Rebecca the house as a wedding gift." I ran my hands over my head. Joe had made his wishes clear, but since when did something as trivial as a last will and testament ever stop my parents? Yes, but she insisted on paying rent. You and Pops have no business taking money from Maggie. That's a matter for your father. Her chin rose. I knew better than to fight this battle, not when I had my own problems. From all reports, Maggie had done a great job with the kids. It'd kill her if she lost custody. Don't be so hard on her. Evelyn pulled the baby from her shoulder and kissed her cheek. Let's go see grandfather. He's going to love you. Another baby girl to spoil. It'd be better if you watch her while I talk to him. Nonsense. You made this mess. You'll deal with the consequences. My mother marched me toward my father's study, as if she were taking me before a firing squad, solemn with a chaser of doom. She rushed inside with Ella, leaving me to watch from the door. Look what your son has brought home. Poor thing. Her mother left her on the doorstep like a bottle of milk. Giuseppe Marchionni Sr., a.k.a. Papa Joe, went wide-eyed for half a beat before he smiled. Evelyn held the baby out to my father and smiled. I told him he should stay here. He needs help. With the hours he keeps, he can't raise a baby. I sighed, which drew my father's attention. I didn't dare grin. Instead, I hung my head and walked into the room. Hey, Pops. Sorry to spring this on you and Ma. I found out about her today. If the fact I'd become a father surprised him, he hid it well. What did you name her? Her mother named her Gabriella Antoinette. She doesn't have our last name, but I intend to change that. Joe Sr. grinned at Ella. A rumbling laugh started in his gut and spilled into the room. Is that right, mio piccola rosa? That's a big name for a little rose. I call her Ella. Where's her mother? Joe's voice remained playful, even if his words didn't. She works on a cruise ship. She left today. Said she's not coming back. Joe's mouth fell open and snapped shut. Have you called our lawyer? Not yet. I'll speak to Santiago tomorrow. Get this taken care of. Joe glanced at his wife. Eve, leave us to discuss business. Evelyn scooped the baby from his arms. Before I go, since my other grandchildren will be under this roof soon, so should Ella. No Marchionni had ever moved back home, and I wouldn't be the first. My brothers would never let me live it down. Ma, I just need a little help getting started. I can and will handle this. She continued speaking as if she hadn't heard me. If Gabriel's man enough to get some girl pregnant, he's man enough to fix his mistakes. I think he needs to track her down and make this right. Not believing my ears, I whipped my head back and forth between them. No freaking way. This is how you speak to your mother? My father narrowed his eyes. Sit down. I come here for help with the baby, the same baby Chantal had abandoned. I'd be damned if I allowed anyone to force me to marry a woman I couldn't stand. All I had to do was drop the name Chantal Dubois, and all talk of marriage would end. My father despised her for a myriad of reasons. Some I knew and some I didn't. And again, my parents were old-school Sicilian. My mother could guilt the devil into turning down the heat, and my father held the deed to my bar and the strings to mine and my brother's finances. Evelyn shot me a warning look, kissed my father's cheek, and left the room. No doubt she headed for the kitchen to conspire with Hildy. One thing I knew for certain, I'd be stuck here until after dinner, if I got out at all. As soon as the door closed, Joe leaned to the side and coughed. The wet gurgle and high-pitched wheeze made my jaw clench. We never mentioned the C word in this house, but that hadn't stopped the cancer from setting up residence in his lungs. I stood and placed my hand on my father's shoulder. Your mother's right, Joe said, waving me away. You're not going to be able to raise a kid and keep bar hours. I know, Pops. I reclaimed the chair. But I'm not going to marry Ella's mother. I'll figure something else out. His eyes brightened, but his jaw tightened. He'd thought of a solution to the problem. You'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone and marry Maggie Guthrie. It'll make your mother happy without the 2 of us having to raise another litter of kids. I froze in place. What? I followed your orders. I haven't spoken to her or gone near Joe's place since the funerals. I doubt she'll speak to me, let alone walk down the aisle. My father believed the wreck that killed my brother and his wife was no accident. At one point, he'd accused Chantal of playing a part in the deaths in some revenge plot over the bad business deal. You had a relationship with Maggie. Rekindle it. Studying me, my dad leaned back in his chair. How the hell would that work? She hated me, and with good reason. I'd told her I wanted to end things so she could follow her dreams or some shit, but in reality, I wanted to protect her from my family and our business associates. Maggie was a stubborn woman. She wouldn't blindly follow orders. My brain spun out of control with the logistics of the situation, but my heart started beating the melody of some ridiculous love song. My father cleared his throat. I'll put security back on her and the kids. Security who would report my every move back to him. No freaking thanks. It's been a year. Nothing's happened. No security. You want me to do this? I'll do it my way. I won't let anything happen to Maggie or the kids. Your brother said the same thing, and look how well that turned out. I know, Pops, I know. I stared at a picture on my father's desk. Papa Joe stood arm in arm with his eldest son, both smiling. After posing for the picture, the two had a falling out that ripped the family apart. Joe Jr. had died before the rift could be repaired. I didn't know what they'd argued about, only that they disagreed over a business decision. After the accident, my father refused to discuss it. You do this your way, and you're responsible for my grandchildren's safety. I pressed my lips together. I would have been looking out for the kids already if he hadn't ordered me and my brothers to stay away from them. Joe coughed again and folded his arms across his chest. It's time for you to step up. Take your place in the company. I'd also done everything in my power to stay on the law-abiding side of the family business. Unfortunately, my father's corporation owned my bar, a situation I'd planned to rectify as soon as possible. I'll start working with you part-time this week. I held his gaze. But my personal life is mine, and I'm keeping the bar. Find a manager and be here full-time. My father drummed his fingers on his desk, something he did when he negotiated with business partners. I didn't dare react and risk him having another coughing fit. It'll take time. I'll work both jobs until I find someone. You'll need help with the baby for when you travel. Marry the Guthrie girl in the next month, or you're moving in here. I won't spend the rest of my days on this earth listening to your mother bitch about how her grandchildren are being raised by some Irish tart. Pop, I need more than a month. Too damned bad. He slammed his fist on the desk, his face turning an alarming shade of red. You'll marry her, or bring all 4 of my grandchildren to your mother. Do I make myself clear? I couldn't let on that I needed time to work my way back into Maggie's good graces because I'd screwed things up with her years before. Yes, sir. Good. I'd hate to pull the bar and everything else away from you. If you break your mother's heart, so help me God. He paused to hack into a handkerchief. You've had it too easy, kid. Joe took care of things for you, but he's gone now. Time for you to man up. I rubbed the back of my neck to postpone the oncoming tension headache. I'd like to stay on the legit side of things. It's not like the old days, Pops. We do what we have to do. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out an envelope, and tossed it my way. What's this? The Lazios are doing better than we expected. We need to up our operations. The operations, as he put it, were killing my profit margin on liquor. We were the only place in the quarter that didn't accept credit cards. Great if you laundered drug money, not so much if you intended to steer clear of the Sicilian mafia, a.k.a. the Cosa Nostra. I'll see what I can do, but the new mayor's making noise. I'll make a call. Remind him of our generous campaign contributions. I glanced at the picture and promised myself I wouldn't cross the line and end up dead. I'd stick around to see Ella grow up. Don't look so glum. It's not such a hardship marrying Maggie Guthrie. Men would kill for those. My father held his cupped hands in front of his chest, mimicking Maggie's breasts. Yeah, she's a looker all right. I stood along with my father. I hated the way he spoke about her, and women in general for that matter, but I'd given up trying to change him years ago. We don't choose our parents. All we can do is love them and fight like hell not to turn into them. Joe barked out a laugh. Do it quick. I want to see you married before I go. Pops, this custody hearing will go away when you walk down the aisle. Did you buy the judge? He clamped his hand on my shoulder. Smart men do what they can to keep their wives happy. You'll understand soon enough." Not trusting my voice, I nodded. It bothered me to see my dad so damn frail. In the couple of weeks since Christmas, he'd dropped a considerable amount of weight. His complexion had paled and his cough had worsened. The demand that I marry Maggie could turn out to be my father's dying wish. How can I say no? Better yet, how can I convince her to say yes?
Chapter 4. Maggie. With each tick of the clock, my heart raced faster. Still in sweats and a ponytail, I had 30 minutes before the babysitter arrived. A half hour to make myself presentable for my date. It was early in the relationship, but we seemed to have things in common. Plus, unlike the others I'd gone out with, he didn't smell like sour milk or use a calculator to split the check or kiss like a cow. Admittedly, my standards were low. The dog went ballistic in the other room. Judging by the tone of her barks, someone or something had stepped into the yard. "Aunt Maggie, someone's here," Chloe called from the living room. At 9 years old, she was allowed to answer the door, but only if I was home and only after she'd run through her safety procedures. "Who is it?" I hurried to the front room and wrangled the dog. "It's Uncle Gabe?" My lungs convulsed, sending all my oxygen out of my mouth. The absolute last person I expected to see stood on my front porch. The kid's uncle, my brother-in-law's brother, otherwise known as my ex-boyfriend. This could not happen. Not now, not ever. Sure, I planned to write a column about him, but I'd decided to do it without ever setting foot in the same room with the man. I reminded myself of the reasons I hated him, but none of that seemed to matter to my heart. Chloe barreled on before I decided what to do. Her eyes widened along with her smile. "What's the password?"
"Snigglefritz,"
Gabe said through the door.
"Wrong."
The girl chewed her lip, likely to keep from laughing.
"Is Maggie home? It's important."
His voice lost its humor. I eased into the foyer and looked through the peephole. Although I had no idea what he wanted, I knew two things. One, I didn't have time for this, and two, it couldn't be good. "We're a little busy, Gabe." My niece clamped her hands over her mouth and giggled.
"Come on, Mags, I need to talk to you."
I drew a deep breath and squared my shoulders. Before I'd gathered the courage to turn the knob, Chloe threw the door open. The little girl leaped into his arms and hugged his neck so tight it looked painful, though Gabe didn't seem to mind.
"Hey, Munchkin."
"I missed you." Chloe pulled back, grinning.
"Miss you too."
He kissed her cheek before setting her down. Even Coco seemed happy to see him. She sniffed his calves and the baby in the carrier beside him before sitting at attention. I did a double take at the infant. My brain struggled to make sense of the situation. Gabe, on my doorstep with a newborn who looked like him.
"Hi, Maggie."
Gabe ran his hand over the back of his neck, with a grin that still made my traitorous stomach do a somersault. I had to hand it to him. He hadn't changed a bit in the 4 years since he dumped me. Long, dark hair made for caressing, tanned skin made for licking, and those eyes. God, don't get me started on those piercing green eyes. Unfortunately for Gabe, I was immune to his charms. He reached down for the carrier.
"It's been a long time. How have you—"
"What are you doing here?"
"Can we come in?"
His voice might have come out strong, but his slumped shoulders and the dark circles under his eyes betrayed him. Against my better judgment, I held the door open. "Sorry. Surprised to see you. Is that your daughter?" He set the carrier beside the couch.
"Yeah, she's mine. Her name's Ella."
Chloe settled beside the baby.
"Oh, Ella, like Cinderella. She's so cute." "Her real name's Gabriella."
Gabe bent and scratched Coco behind the ears. Once again, my body revolted against me. The idea that he'd had a baby with someone who'd loved him enough to name their child after him ripped me in two. Then again, this was Gabe, the man who'd taken a sledgehammer to my heart 4 years ago. Gabriel Anthony Marchionni, the oldest surviving Marchionni brother and biggest ladies' man in New Orleans. He flashed Chloe a smile that most would find sweet, but I didn't trust it.
You got so big. How old are you now, 26? Are you married?
I saw you at Christmas. You know I'm 9. She stood and set her hands on her hips. Aunt Maggie, can I play Xbox? Sure, but let your little brother play too. Come on, Coco. Chloe rolled her eyes and ran toward the playroom. Not even a baby could compete with video games. The dog sniffed Gabe one last time and followed her pint-sized master. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but clamped it shut and took a step closer to me. Too close, as if he still had a right to invade my personal space. I eased back. It's not that I feared Gabe, but I knew better than to get within sniffing distance. I'd never forgotten his scent. Sandalwood and cedar and sin. He frowned and glanced around the room. Children's toys, shoes, stacks of mail cluttered the room. A half-dead Christmas tree sat in the corner, surrounded by a halo of dry needles. The longer he looked, the more my cheeks heated until my embarrassment dissolved into anger. What gave him the right to judge my housekeeping skills? Sure, I wasn't perfect, but I damn sure made lemonade out of a barrel of rotten lemons. He shoved his hands in his jean pockets. Ryan had an ear infection. We haven't gotten much sleep this week. My words had come out far more defensive than I'd intended.
Is he okay?
Yeah, the antibiotics finally kicked in. I cleared piles of folded laundry from the couch and motioned for him to sit.
What's the story behind the tree?
Chloe asked if we could keep it a while longer. This is their first Christmas without their parents. How could I say no?
You couldn't, I guess.
Gabe stared at me the same way he had the living room, assessing the mess. In bleach-stained sweats and an oversized t-shirt, I looked like I'd rolled out of bed at dinner time. I ran a hand over my head to smooth the loose strands back into my ponytail. I was about to get in the shower.
Need someone to wash your back?
He flashed me a crooked smile. An unwelcome memory of our previous bath time activities danced through my mind. 4 years. It's been 4 years, and he acts like we're still a couple. I'm seeing someone. We have a date. I have a date tonight with my boyfriend.
A date?
He tilted his head. Yes, Gabe. That's what normal people do, go on dates. All right, it was the 3rd time I'd gone out with this guy, but we'd talked for hours on the phone, often late at night. That had to count for something. Nevertheless, Gabe didn't need to know any of that. I sat on the edge of the love seat, though every fiber of my being screamed to get him out the door.
Right.
Gabe stared for a moment, sighed, and looked at his hands.
Can Ella and I stay here for a couple weeks?
Here? Why? I mean, your place is 15 minutes away. My mouth went dry. Was he serious? No way could Gabe freaking Marchionni live in the same house as me and the kids. He was my ex, and much to my horror, my body liked the idea of having him under my roof a lot. He met my gaze.
I'd like to spend some time.
With the kids? Really? It's been a year since their parents died, and none of their so-called uncles have bothered to visit them. I had no idea why I blasted him, but I refused to take it back.
I was grieving too, and I've seen them at my folks'.
We were all grieving. Gabe sighed.
You're right. I should have been there for them after the accident.
Why come here? Why not go to your parents?
My father's sick.
The sadness in his voice made me second-guess myself. I'm sorry. I heard that he's ill and he didn't look good the last time I dropped the kids off. He sat on the couch, rested his elbows on his knees, and bowed his head.
I'll be taking over the business soon.
The business? What about his bar? He loves that place. I clasped my hands to keep from fidgeting, or worse, touching him. Where's Ella's mother?
Not in the picture. It's a long story.
I have a few minutes. I told myself I asked because I needed information for the article. My curiosity had nothing to do with jealousy.
Too bad I didn't believe my own lies. I met her at a hospitality event in town. Went out a couple of times, nothing serious. She started acting strange and I ended things. Then a couple of weeks ago, she showed up demanding I take a paternity test. He laughed, a hollow sound that had nothing to do with amusement. I thought, no way, it's mine. This afternoon, she handed me the test results, a diaper bag, and the baby. I held up my hand and took a minute to process what he'd said. She left the baby with you? Said she didn't want to be a mother and left. His expression reminded me of Coco begging to come inside. Nope, no sad faces, no belly rubs, no feeding strays. I turned my head. Looking into his green eyes felt like looking into the face of a cobra, lulling, mesmerizing, deadly. I didn't know if I wanted to slug him or cry. I went with the safer choice, anger. And the first thing you do is come here? I figured since you're so good with the kids, I stood and backed away from him and the infant. No way. I'm not taking responsibility for another kid. Rebecca's 3 are enough. Jesus, Gabe, what do you think this is, the Baby Humane Society? It's not like that. He grinned. I'm planning to stay here too. Part of me wanted to grab him by the ear and throw him out. I refused to entertain what the other part of me wanted with kids present. Gabe sighed and pushed to his feet. Look, you need help with the bills and to get my folks off your back. I need help with Ella. It's a win-win. A win-win, my ass. It had taken me almost 2 years to get over him. I'd be damned if I'd put myself through that again. I can't do this with you.
Chapter 5. Gabe. My God, how did I let this woman go? They say contrasts are sexy, and I couldn't agree more. Memories of us flooded my mind. My tan hands on her pale skin, her blonde curls and my dark hair spread out on a pillow, her soft curves against my hard... Sucking in a breath, I forced myself to make a U-turn on memory lane and focus on the woman in front of me. Beauty, brains, and one hell of a temper, she wore her emotions like the sky wore clouds. One look, and I knew Hurricane Maggie was about to make landfall. I rested my hands on her shoulders. Mags, please. I'm sorry for the way things ended between us, but I have no clue how to take care of a baby, and my place in the quarter isn't exactly child-proof. Get a nanny. You can afford it. It'll take time to find someone. Give me 2 weeks, enough to get me started, and long enough to convince you how right we are for one another. Who's running the bar while you're here? My cousin Jessie until I hire a manager. As if on cue, Ella squirmed and made unhappy noises. Maggie raised a brow and nodded to the baby. Please. I folded my hands and dropped to one knee. Cheesy, I know, but desperate times call for cheddar. I'm in deep here. I can't even figure out how to get her out of the car seat. She closed her eyes and shook her head. You have 4 younger brothers. How's it possible you're so clueless with children? Not children, just babies. I hated feeling so damned helpless. 2 weeks. No more. Thank you. I moved in for a hug. Maggie blocked me by squatting and unfastening the buckles and straps holding Ella in the seat. She brought the baby to her shoulder. I have a boyfriend, so don't even think about getting physical. I'm not your nanny, maid, chef, or friend. Do I make myself clear? Did I hurt you that bad? As usual, my mouth got ahead of my brain. Don't flatter yourself. She's wet. Maggie handed Ella to me. I'd used porta-potties that smelled better than the kid. Her diaper weighed more than she did and had leaked through her clothes. Change her in the bedroom. I need to cancel the sitter and my date. I can't leave you alone with 4 kids. She spun and walked toward the kitchen. I adjusted Ella to prevent the mess from seeping into my shirt. That's crazy. Go out. I'll watch the kids. Isn't learning to take care of a child the reason you're here? I'm canceling the date. She jabbed her finger into my chest. I want to toss you out on your perfectly sculpted backside, but I can't do that to Ella. She didn't ask her mother to abandon her with a Class A asshole. I sucked in a breath and took a step back. I'd handled our breakup like a coward. She had every right to her anger, but that didn't make it easier to swallow. Rather than continuing the argument, I winked. Nice to know you still think I have a nice ass. She glared. Zach, my oldest nephew, came down the hall and did a double take. Uncle Gabe, what are you doing here? I clamped a hand on his shoulder. I'm going to stay here for a couple of weeks. That's great. The teenager motioned to Ella. Whose baby? She's mine. Holy shit. He gave Maggie a sheepish grin. I mean, holy cow, you have a kid? I could use some help tonight. I nodded toward the pissed-off woman. Mags has a date. She sucked in a breath and shook her head. He's busy with homework and needs to practice his sax. Nah, that's cool. I don't mind helping. He poked around in the fridge. I shifted Ella to my shoulder and wished I hadn't. Urine soaked into my shirt. See? Zach and I can handle the kids. Okay, I'll go. She folded her arms. I turned my head before she caught me staring at her chest. Which room do you want me and Ella in? Maggie glanced at the baby inside. I'm in the guest room. You can take the master. Can she sleep in the bed with me? No, but Ryan's crib is still in there. He doesn't use it anymore. She snatched her cell phone from the counter and headed for the back of the house. You sure? Yeah, it's fine. Let me clear it out. Unsure what to do, I trailed behind her. Better to keep an eye on her to make sure she didn't start overthinking the situation and throw us out on the street. Maggie tossed a towel on the floor and took the diaper bag from my arm. Lay her down. I knelt and placed Ella in front of her. Maggie had changed since the last time I'd seen her. She smiled less, and the twin wrinkles between her brows had deepened. Raising 3 kids hadn't been completely unkind. She'd filled out in ways that made me want to slide my hands beneath her t-shirt and explore her new curves. Use a wipe, even if she's wet. No powder, no ointment, unless she has a diaper rash. She did some sort of ninja move with a diaper. Wait, slow down and do that again. She gave me an impatient look that reminded me of my mother. It's simple. Put the clean diaper under her bottom before you pull out the dirty one. Got it. I didn't have it. In fact, I didn't have any clue how she'd pulled it off. She should be eating every 3 to 4 hours, but don't wake her to feed her. She'll let you know when she's hungry. She pulled a clean pair of pajamas out of the bag and dressed Ella. Follow the directions on the formula can to make her bottles. They need to be body temperature. Put the bottle in hot water. Don't use the microwave. Always test the milk on the inside of your wrist before you give it to her. Got it. I lifted my daughter into my arms. Maggie opened her mouth as if she had something to say, but bit her lip. Thanks. She put the wipes back into the bag and pulled out the envelope with Ella's birth certificate. What's this? Read it. Tell me if it looks legit. As much as I wanted the documents to be bogus, I doubted they were. Maggie's frown deepened with each page. They seem that way, but you should call the lab. I'll have my attorney look into it. Maybe run a second test to be sure. Do it soon, before you get more attached. She glanced at the clock and sighed. I use the master bath. I'll move my stuff out later, but I don't have time to do it right now. I need to get dressed. Memories of the 2 of us in my shower hardened my cock. The bastard always did have bad timing. We can share. I'll use the one in the hall. She walked to the door and turned. You're sure you can handle this? Hell no, I wasn't sure. We'll be fine. She smiled and hurried to her room. By the time I walked into the kitchen to dump the filthy clothes and diaper into the trash, all 3 kiddos had converged at the bar. Chloe cocked her head. Uncle Gabe, why were you and Aunt Maggie arguing? Adults do that sometimes. Zach snickered. Kids do it too. Mind your business, Chloe. She huffed. Whatever, bonehead. The teen glowered at his sister. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. All right, munchkins. What's on the agenda for tonight? Jimmy party! Ryan pumped his fist like a 3-year-old rock star. Woot, woot, woot! Zach held up his hands. Nothing personal, but I've got homework. Chloe motioned for me to come closer and lowered her voice. Can we stay up past 8 and have junk food? I glanced over my shoulder as if to make sure no one stood behind me. It's not a party without pizza and root beer. A grin split the girl's face. And 10 o'clock bedtime? Sounds reasonable. I'm out. Yell if you need me. Zach retreated to his room. Maggie rushed into the living room in a whirlwind of pink. Her lips, her dress, even her toes were varying shades of girly. She looked good. Too good. Wow, Aunt Maggie, you look pretty, Chloe said. Pretty, Ryan nodded. My chest tightened. Maggie had surpassed pretty and gone straight to gorgeous. So much so, I had a sudden urge to tell her to stay home. Instead, I flashed her my signature grin. Beautiful. Thanks. She blushed, and once again my cock sat up and took notice. I walked to the fridge in search of a beer. She kissed Chloe in Ryan's cheeks. Are you guys okay with Gabe watching you? I'll only be gone a couple of hours. Chloe nodded and glanced at me with big doe eyes. We're going to have a pajama party. Maggie sighed, obviously rethinking her decision to leave. I love pajama parties. Maybe I should stay. Yeah, stay. We'll have a private party, sans the pajamas. I closed the distance between us and set my hand on the small of her back. Ushering her toward the door before I changed my mind, I whispered, They already told me you don't allow junk food, and bedtime's at 8 o'clock. Nothing personal, Mags, but your idea of a party sounds like a downer. Her eyes flashed, and she turned, likely to tell me what I could do with my downer, only to be silenced by the giggling behind me. Fine, but make sure Ryan doesn't drink too much, or he'll soak through his nighttime pull-ups, and you'll be the one stripping wet sheets in the morning. I winced. My first adventure with Ella's diaper had scarred me. I didn't want to contemplate how much piss a 3-year-old would produce. She seemed to have enjoyed my reaction because she flashed me her first real smile since I'd arrived. I'll be home by 10. Do you still have my cell phone number? Stay out as long as you want. And yes, I have your number. I held the door for her and followed her to the porch. She hesitated. Don't let them talk you into turning the Christmas tree on. Are you kidding? That thing would go up like a Roman candle. You know it's February, right? Yes, smartass, I do. But I've been busy. She stared for a beat. Try not to spoil them too much. You're visiting. I'm the one who'll have to unspoil them when you go back to your life. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Have fun, Maggie.
Chapter 6. Maggie. I burst through the doors of the sushi bar and straight into a crowd. I elbowed and excused my way through the sea of people to the hostess stand. The girl, who looked too young to have a job, let alone wear a top that revealed half her breasts, smiled. We are on a 2-hour wait. I'm meeting someone. I snagged a tissue and blotted the sweat from my forehead. His name is Justin? Justin Trudeau? She covered her mouth to hide her grin. Surprised someone her age would recognize the name. I leaned closer and lowered my voice. Not that Justin Trudeau. He has an unfortunate name. Confusion crossed her features, but she shook it off and checked her list. I'm sorry, but I don't have him on the list. Maybe it's under Maggie Guthrie? I checked the time on my cell. I'd arrived 10 minutes late. I don't have you either. She stared at my eyebrows. The original time was 7:30. We rescheduled for 8. My voice went shrill. She motioned to the crowded dining room. You're welcome to take a look. The man behind me grumbled under his breath. Thank you. I hurried into the main dining room and spotted Justin near the back. He turned and smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Evidently, he didn't like to be kept waiting. Sorry, I'm late, new sitter. I bit my lip to keep from apologizing again. You're not sick, are you? He leaned back as if to put distance between himself and my imaginary germs. No, I'm fine. I motioned for the server, who ignored me. I ordered for both of us. The food should be out soon. Justin gave me a pointed look and wiped his forehead. Oh, did you remember I don't like raw fish? I hated it when others ordered my food. Trying new things is good for you. He reached for my hand. It's crunch time at work. I'll be working around the clock. We should get away next weekend. Go to the coast and get some sun. I jerked back, almost knocking over the soy sauce in the process. This was our 3rd time out together. Definitely not long enough to discuss overnight dates. I can't next weekend. Chloe has a dance recital coming up, which means extra practices. Maybe we can do it after tax season? Justin stared at me, but somehow never met my gaze.
I think it's great you're such a good mother to those poor kids.
I nodded, dreading the speech. Next he'd say the inevitable but, followed by a gentle breakup.
They're lucky to have someone like you caring for them.
It doesn't bother you that I put the kids first?
Why would it bother me?
He eased back to allow the server to put the food on the table. You'd be surprised how many guys don't want to date a single mother. I surveyed the various rolls, all of which appeared to contain raw fish.
You should take time for yourself. Relationships require work. All relationships.
His eyes darkened and traveled to my chest.
In fact, why don't we get this to go?
I forced a laugh. He'd pushed to take our relationship to a physical level since our first date. I thought he'd gotten the message that I intended to take things slow, but it seemed I was wrong about a lot of things. So, will this be our last date for a while?
That depends on your feelings about takeout.
He wiggled his brows. I didn't have men beating down my door, but ugh, what a jerk. My thoughts drifted back to Gabe. As much of a horn dog as he was, he'd never put me in this kind of situation.
Maggie?
I don't know. What am I saying? The answer is no. I'm absolutely not ready for sex. An image of Gabe's body moving over mine popped into my head. Where the heck did that come from? I can't tonight. I have a new roommate.
You let someone move in?
Sort of. My brother-in-law and his daughter are staying at the house for a couple weeks. Justin arched a brow. He's in a rough spot. I stuffed a piece of sushi in my mouth before I said anything else. The flavor of dead fish hit my tongue and curdled my stomach. As discreetly as possible, I spat the sushi into my napkin.
Is this the brother-in-law that dumped you?
Justin curled his lip, but I couldn't tell if my manners or my roomie had caused the reaction. I nodded and took a swig of water. Justin pushed back from the table.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Me either, but it's short term. Justin waved his hand, dismissing the topic.
Let's go.
Justin, I can't.
That's bullshit.
He shot to his feet and tossed his napkin on the table as if throwing down a gauntlet.
I won't share you with another man. Come with me now, or we're over.
People stared and whispered. I wanted to crawl under the table and hide, but more than that, I wanted to punch Justin Trudeau in the balls. He might as well have painted a huge red A on my chest.
Maggie?
He thrust his hand in my face. I forced a smile. Stop at the 24-hour pharmacy on the way to your place. He flashed me a triumphant smile.
I have plenty of condoms.
How about lube? I hear it helps when jerking off. He turned and stormed out. I hung my head and fought to keep my emotions in check. Not that I was sad about the breakup. He could good and truly go screw himself. These were angry tears. The waitress brought a to-go container and the check. Not only had he demanded sex, he'd left me to pay for food I couldn't stand. I snatched my napkin from the table to dry my eyes, and the half-chewed piece of sushi fell into my cleavage. Let's just say, the tears started and didn't stop until I was safely in my car. I had nowhere to go and no one to see, but I couldn't go home. I'd rather sit in my car eating cheeseburgers than share my latest disaster with Gabe. I'd loved him once upon a time. Heck, I thought we'd eventually end up married. For a year, we were the couple everyone envied, if a couple is what you call a whirlwind romance with a scorching, hot older man that ended with him giving me a lecture on chasing my dreams, followed by him ghosting me. I hurried to my car and did what any woman would do in my situation. I called my best friend. Shauna picked up on the fourth ring. Hey, Maggie, I thought you had a date with the Mr. Short, Pasty, and Boring. I did. I called for advice, but now that I had her on the line, I didn't know where to start. Can I come over? Sure, but you hate the French Quarter. Want me to come to you? No, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I disconnected before she asked me any questions. Some things needed to be discussed face to face. Thanks to traffic and drunken tourists, it took me a half hour to reach Shauna's condo on Charter Street. She was right when she said I hated the quarter, but it wasn't the crowds that bothered me. It was the memories. I'd avoided the area as much as possible since Gabe and I had broken up. "There you are," Shauna called from her postage stamp-sized balcony. I trudged up the flight of stairs and met her at her door. "Sometimes I hate my life." She took one look at me and covered her mouth, much in the same way the hostess at the sushi bar had. "Oh, honey, you've got a little something." "What?" Shauna pulled bits of tissue from my forehead. I bit my lower lip to stop it from quivering. That's what the receptionist was laughing about. Justin, the jerk, had let me sit through dinner with bits of Kleenex hanging from my eyebrows. She draped an arm over my shoulder and guided me to her couch. "You look like you could use a drink." "I have to drive home." "Okay, but alcohol is why God created ride shares." She plopped down beside me. "What's going on?" "Justin dumped me because I wouldn't go home with him." "Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the guy you said had a tongue like an oversaturated sponge." "No, that was the one before Justin." I grinned despite my crappy night. "I can't keep up with them all." She wiggled her brows. "What's there been? 10? 3 since he who shall not be named dumped me, and 2 of them never got past the first date." I kicked my shoes off and drew my knees to my chest. "Don't let it get you down. This is New Orleans. There are almost as many men as there are rats." She waved her hand. "You were obviously too good for him." "I won't miss introducing him." "Yeah, no kidding. Too bad he didn't look like the other Justin Trudeau." She gave my shoulder a squeeze. "Dating sucks, but at least you got back on the horse." "I guess. I hadn't ridden anything, equine or otherwise, in 4 years, a fact that brought me to my next problem. Gabe Marchionni is babysitting." Shauna laughed as if waiting for the punchline. When I failed to deliver, she said, "At your house? Gabe, the man who we both hate, is at your house with your kids?" "They're his niece and nephews, too." The defensiveness in my voice surprised me. She stood, went into the kitchen, and returned with a glass of wine. "Spill it." I told her everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the part about how certain body parts had practically melted at the sound of his voice. I should go home, right? I mean, it's crazy to leave him alone with the kids. "Don't you dare. He deserves whatever hell they give him tonight." Shauna had a point, but worst-case scenarios played through my mind. They shouldn't get attached to someone who isn't going to be around for long. They've had enough loss. "I didn't say you should let him stay. I guarantee 4 hours alone with the Marchionni brood and he'll run home to Mommy." "You're probably right." I wanted to call and check in, but I couldn't bring myself to move. "I am 100% right." She downed half her glass. "You're already second-guessing yourself. That man is trouble on 2 legs." 2 long, muscular legs. "You're right. I'm asking him to leave tomorrow." "No, you're telling him to leave." I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't do it, not when it meant throwing a newborn baby out with him. "Shauna, I need a favor." Normally I'd say anything, but I have the feeling this had something to do with Gabe. "It does." "I need you to do some digging on a woman named Chantal Dubois. Birth date is August 21st, 1989. "Mind telling me what this is about?" "She's his baby's mother." "How do you know Gabe's baby mama's birth date?" I bit my lip and hung my head. Ella's birth certificate and the paternity test results were in the diaper bag. "You were snooping?" Shauna choked out a laugh. "No, I wasn't snooping. He asked me to look at it to see if I thought it looked counterfeit. I can't help it if I remember details." Some people called it a photographic memory, but I disagreed. My talent only worked with dates and names, a useful skill in history class and trivia nights, not much good for anything else. Shauna grabbed her phone and hit a couple of buttons. "Give me her info again." I gave her Chantal and Ella's information. She smirked. "Gabriella Antoinette? He named his kid after himself?
The mother named the baby. Anyway, can you do some digging and see what you can find out about Chantal Dubois? I reached for her wine and took a sip. Shauna refilled the glass.
Such as?
Where she is, who she is, anything. I need to make sure he's telling me the whole truth. I mean, what kind of woman abandons her baby?
I think you should ask yourself what kind of guy sleeps with someone who would abandon her baby.
I'd expected Shauna to be hostile toward Gabe, but not this hostile.
I'm sorry.
Sure, I'll see what I can find. Anything else I should know?
Gabe's going to have his attorney check with the lab that did the paternity test.
I can't think of anything else right now.
I'll look into this and get the information you need on the Marchionni Corporation, but I'm worried about you.
I thought back to the dark circles under Gabe's eyes and how defeated he'd seemed. I'm a big girl. I can handle myself around him.
Uh-huh.
I'm not ready to go home. Let's binge watch something funny. I tugged Shauna's throw blanket off the back of the couch and settled in.
You're right.
A few hours with the kids and Gabe will run for the door.
If not, I'd be happy to tell him to get lost.
Chapter 7. Gabe. I surveyed the living room. With the exception of the mess, the house looked the same as it had before my brother died. A novel sat on the table beside Joe's leather chair. A scrap of paper marked the place where the reader had stopped. Too bad my life doesn't have a bookmark telling me where to begin again. Chloe and Ryan had sprawled out on a blanket to watch cartoons. Not that I had much time to watch television, but Scooby-Doo remained one of my favorites. I settled into the couch to enjoy the goofy dog and his stoner owner. A split second later, Chloe groaned and covered her face.
Ryan, is that you?
He shook his head and pointed at Ella. I winced. Again? It had to happen sooner or later, but I'd preferred later, like after Maggie came home. Scooping the baby in my arms, I went to find reinforcements. Zach? Yeah? A voice called from inside the room. I poked my head inside and grinned. It looked like a laundry bomb had exploded. Clothing covered every surface, including the bed. Hey, man, can you help me with something? Sure, what's up? Zach blinked a few times as his eyes adjusted to the light in the hallway. At 13, he was as tall and lanky as his father had been at that age. I need a hand with Ella's diaper. So I smell, Zach laughed. I'll be the wingman, but you're piloting this one. I laid Ella down on another towel and mentally prepared for battle. Drawing a deep breath, I unsnapped her onesie. Zach pulled the diaper and wipes from the bag and placed them beside me. You got this. It's coming out the sides. I reached and retreated several times, unsure where to touch her. How long has it been since you changed her? Zach searched through the bag and pulled out tiny pajamas with feet. Maggie changed her before she left. I opened the dirty diaper and swayed away from the odor. My God! Dude, that's gross! What are you feeding her? Zach covered his face. I don't know. Formula, I guess. She needs a bath, but we need one of those baby tub things. It seemed like I needed a lot of things. Changing tables, bathtubs, nose plugs. I can hold her over the sink while you spray her down. Zach motioned to me. Let's use wipes for now. Maggie will know what to do when she gets home. My hands felt too large for such a small baby. I couldn't figure out how to clean her without going elbow deep in shit. After several attempts, I gave up and dove in. Is it supposed to smell like that? Why is it green? I don't know. Ryan stinks pretty bad. Zach took a step back. Google it. I pulled more wipes from the container. At this rate, I'd run out before dawn. The kid whipped out his phone. This is disturbing. Yeah, tell me about it. I couldn't decide if it was better to breathe through my nose and smell it, or my mouth, and risk the odor sticking to the back of my throat. No, look. He shoved his phone in my line of vision. Pics of baby shit in a rainbow of colors filled the screen. Not helping. My gag reflex took over. He chuckled. I'm still looking? Once I had Ella clean, I slid a new diaper under her butt and fumbled with the tabs. It looked looser than the one I'd taken off, but it stayed on. I eased clean PJs under her and stuffed her arm into a sleeve. Ella cried until she shook, and her face turned an odd shade of magenta. She's turning purple. Zach helped me align the snaps along the inside of her legs. They do that when they're pissed. She's breathing, otherwise she wouldn't be screaming. True. Other than the images, did you find anything online? He picked her up and settled her against his shoulder. 2 web pages said smelly stools could be a food allergy. Maybe she's allergic to milk. Ella quieted to whimpers and hiccuped breaths. We should call Maggie. I fished my phone from my pocket. No, I'm sure she'll be fine. Maggie doesn't go out much. We shouldn't bug her over poop. I followed him into the kitchen. If my brothers found out I'd asked the kid for help, they'd never let me live it down, but man, oh man, was I grateful. Should I feed her? Yeah, good idea. Zach traded me the baby for a bottle of water and a can of formula. The instructions seem simple enough. This is a 4-ounce bottle. The directions say 2 scoops. I mix drinks for a living. I think I can handle that. You have to warm it in hot water. Zach supervised as I made my first meal for my daughter. I remembered Maggie said to test the temperature on the inside of my wrist. I think it's good. Now what? He took the bottle and brushed the rubber nipple across her lips until Ella got to work. See? Nothing to it. I couldn't help but smile. I'd made my first bottle, and she seemed to like it. Thanks. I'm clueless with this stuff. You don't have a lot of clothes for her. They go through a lot in a day. Plus, there's poop on the blankets in the carrier. I'll put the dirty stuff in the washer. I peeked around the corner at Chloe and Ryan and glanced back to Zach. You need special baby soap. He laughed, shaking his head. You really are clueless. Do me a favor and don't tell your uncles. I wondered if Ella would survive her first day in my care. How come you know so much about babies? I helped my mom out with Ryan when she had the baby blues. Do you want to try? He held the baby up to me. Sure. I fumbled to settle Ella into my arms, but managed to coax her into finishing most of the bottle before she fell asleep. We should try to put her in the crib. I followed Zach down the hall to Joe and Rebecca's room. The space looked the same as it had before they died, right down to the wedding photo on the nightstand. Why hadn't Maggie changed anything? I'd be sleeping in a mausoleum. The kid took Ella, laid her on her back, and lifted the side of the crib. Does she need a pillow? I watched her sleep and wished I could crawl in with her. It had been one hell of a day. Not unless you want her to suffocate. And you shouldn't use a blanket either. Her feety jammies will keep her warm. Zach patted my shoulder. It's not hard, once you know the rules. Thanks again. I owe you one. I pinched the bridge of my nose to stave off a headache. 1 down, 2 to go. Those 2 are easy. Ryan needs a bath, but you have to sit with him. Chloe's attitude will drive you nuts, but she can shower by herself. Make sure they brush their teeth, and Ryan has to pee twice before bed. Once after he brushes his teeth, and again after you read him a story. Don't give him anything to drink, or he floods the bed. I can handle that. Listen, I'm sorry I haven't seen you much since your dad died. Zach shrugged. You're busy. We see you on holidays at Grandma Evelyn's. It's all good. Are you still playing guitar? Yeah, plus sax in the marching band. We should jam sometime. Next time I go home, I'll get my guitar. We should do it at your place. Maggie freaks out if I play too loud. Duly noted. I returned to the living room to check on the other 2 munchkins. Maggie had done a remarkable job with the kids, but the house made me claustrophobic. She had piles of stuff on every available surface. I owed her one, a big one. I might not know anything about babies, but I could clean with the best of them. All right, troops, gather around. We are going to do something nice for Maggie. I rubbed my hands together as they approached. Ryan, pick up your toys and put them in the playroom. Ryan looked at me as if I'd grown a second nose. Why? Because Zach can't vacuum with toys on the floor. Zach came down the hall. Wait, how did I get sucked into this? What do I do, Uncle Gabe? Chloe beamed. Pretending to consider her question, I tapped my chin. You can put these clothes away. At least get them to the right bedroom, if you don't know where they go. To my surprise, the kids got to work without being told twice. I started with the dishes. The tactical position gave me a central location to keep an eye on the munchkins while they worked. The stacks of mail came next. I sorted what looked like household bills into one pile, personal mail in another, and junk in the garbage. The kids put away their backpacks, extra shoes, and coats. Once Zach vacuumed the fallen needles from the floor, the Christmas tree seemed to stand prouder. The thing really needed to go, but otherwise, the place looked good. I glanced at the clock. We didn't have much time before Maggie came home. Bath time. No bath. Ryan made a break for it. I grabbed him around the middle before he could escape. Oh, no you don't, little man. Giggling and squirming, Ryan squealed. I want a shower. I glanced at Zach and quirked a brow. He shook his head. Bath it is. I tossed the boy into the air, catching him under his arms. Chloe, take a shower in Maggie's bathroom. A devilish expression crossed her face. Judging by the piles of lotions and potions, I doubted Maggie allowed her to shower in the master bathroom. Deciding to pick my battles, I let it go. How much trouble could she possibly get into? Zach, take my keys and get the black checkbook out of the glove compartment. Make sure you lock it, and don't even think about a joyride. I carried Ryan down the hall. This parenting thing wasn't so bad. 15 minutes later, I had the little man scrubbed down and in his PJs. The finish line was within my grasp. All I had to do was supervise teeth brushing and make sure Ryan emptied his bladder. I walked into the living room and all hope of a moment's peace evaporated. Chloe hadn't taken a shower. Makeup covered every inch of skin on her face, including her ears. She painted her nails, though I couldn't tell if she'd used polish or a paint roller. She wore one of Maggie's silk robes, also splattered with makeup, and a pair of her high heels. The girl looked like a miniature vampire drag queen. Am I gorgeous, darling? She preened. For the first time in my life, I understood why animals ate their young. Is that nail polish? Stupid question. The scent of chemicals hung in the air. Chloe nodded. Are you allowed to play in Maggie's makeup? Also a stupid question. The woman didn't allow junk food. She'd never consent to this. Chloe bit her lip and shook her head. Go take a shower and wash that off your face before Maggie gets home. I'll help you with the nail polish when you're done. Chloe started toward the master bedroom, but I put a hand on her head and pointed her in the direction of the kids' bathroom. No way. Be careful, the floor is wet. The clock chimed 10 times. How the hell does Maggie do this alone, day in and day out? I doubled down on convincing her to marry me. Whether she knew it or not, we needed each other.
Chapter 8. Maggie. I walked through the front door, still thinking about the evening. It took me a moment to realize someone had cleaned the house. Even the 2-month-old Christmas tree looked better.
Did you have a good time?
Gabe asked from the kitchen. Yes, I did. How are the kids? I rounded the corner and found him at the island nursing a glass of whiskey.
Chloe got into your makeup and nail polish, but I think I got it all off the countertop and floor. I couldn't have done it without Zach. I gave him $20 for his help. Otherwise, they're bathed, tucked in, teeth brushed, and bladders emptied.
Sounds like you had fun. I eyed his glass. Where did you find that? He stood slowly, as if his muscles had stiffened from sitting too long.
Joe's stash is still in the garage closet. Want a drink?
Really? I'd gone through every inch of the house except the garage. Just one. I don't drink much anymore.
I think Ella might be allergic to milk. Can you help me get her an appointment with a pediatrician?
I can, but are you staying?
Why would I change my mind?
Why indeed? So much for the kids freaking him out. I'll call the pediatrician first thing Monday unless you think it's an emergency.
Her poop is blackish green and smells like the river, but she's eating.
It's probably nothing, but I'll keep an eye on her.
I started a grocery list and one for things I need for the baby. I hope you don't mind I used your computer.
That's fine. I glanced at the stack of papers on the bar. My hand trembled as I picked up the second notice from the power company. You paid my bills?
No. Your personal mail is unopened on the desk. I paid the household expenses.
I started to speak, but he interrupted.
Consider it rent.
I couldn't believe it. Part of me wanted to yell at him for invading my privacy, but the other part wanted to hug him. It had been a long time since someone had done something so nice for me. Thank you.
When did you start dating?
Gabe pulled down a glass, poured a respectable amount of whiskey, and topped it off with a splash of Coke to add color. Thanks. I sipped the drink and gasped.
You're welcome.
He chuckled and reclaimed his bar stool.
Are you avoiding my question?
A few months ago, on a dare. I eased onto the stool next to him.
A dare?
He ran his hand over his stubbly chin.
What kind of dare?
Not wanting to go there, I shrugged. How's work?
Don't change the subject. Tell me about this dare.
Shauna dared me to sign up for an online dating service. I went out with 2 guys from the site but took down my profile when I met Justin. He smirked as he refilled our glasses.
And it's working out?
Nope. I guess. Gabe grew quiet. I waited until I couldn't stand the silence. 3 weeks is a long time to be away from your place.
If it's an inconvenience, I'll figure out something else.
Like what?
I don't know. I could use a vacation. Florida's nice this time of year.
I loved the idea of a few days with nothing to do except work and sleep. The kids have next Monday off of school.
You're pretty excited over a hypothetical trip.
He nudged me with his shoulder.
Or is it a couple of nights in a hotel with me?
You could take the kids to Disney with your parents. Your mother has them every other weekend anyway. Plus, you said you needed to talk to your dad. That way, I could get some work done and have a sleepover with Justin. I had no idea why I'd suggested that, not when I'd rather sleep with Attila the Hun.
Ella's too young to travel.
Gabe grinned, seeming to hold back laughter.
Besides, Chloe told me your sleepovers end at 8:30, remember?
I lifted my glass and downed half its contents. My sleepovers are a lot of fun.
They used to be.
He flashed me a crooked grin and wiggled his brows. Not that I remember what a grown-up sleepover is like. I ignored his damn grin and his eyes and his biceps. Instead, I focused on the countertop.
How long has it been?
He emptied the remainder of the whiskey into my glass. I stared at the ceiling, making a show of counting on my fingers. When did you dump me again? He choked on his whiskey.
What? Wait. You haven't slept with anyone since me?
Damn it, I should have lied. I didn't want to do the rebound thing. Then I was busy with school, then Rebecca died, and the rest is history. He seemed to consider my words.
I thought you had a boyfriend now.
We're taking it slow. Why am I lying to him?
Glaciers move faster, Mags.
My face heated, though I doubted it had anything to do with blushing. The alcohol had gone straight to my head faster than this conversation had gone into the gutter. I can't.
Can't what?
He turned to face me. Actually, he dumped me, but that's not all. He did it loudly in a crowded restaurant and left me with the check. I shot him what I hoped was a withering glare. I spent the rest of the night at Shauna's watching bad cable and eating ice cream.
The guy sounds like an asshole.
He's not the first asshole I've run across. I folded my arms.
I should have returned your calls.
Gabe reached for my shoulder. Water under the bridge. I dodged his hand and went for my drink. Gabe scooted the glass out of my grasp.
Is it?
Yes. At least I thought it was until he'd showed up looking all sexy and cleaned my house and paid my electric bill. Besides, I can't jump in the sack with anyone. Your mother watches me like a hawk. She's taking me back to court next month. If I start sleeping around, I'll lose the kids quicker than the Baptists make it to Sunday brunch. Gabe slid the drink in my direction.
She doesn't need to know.
I raised the glass for a toast. Here's to your mother getting a new hobby besides harassing me.
Is she that bad?
She's on me like a tick on a 2-legged hound dog. Imagining Evelyn clinging to a dog like a starving vampire made me giggle. Gabe snorted and motioned to my glass.
More whiskey? You're more fun drunk.
Why, thank you.
How's work going? Are you writing another crime novel?
I downed the remainder of my drink. No, I haven't had time to work on another book. I write society pieces. They're garbage.
I've read your articles. They're not garbage.
No one reads reviews for cultural events in New Orleans. Locals know what they like, and most tourists come for booze, boobs, and beads. I winked. Oh, sorry, that's right up your alley.
Just because I run a bar doesn't mean I don't appreciate culture.
I remember the ballet turned you on.
Thinking about what I would do to you after the ballet turned me on.
I narrowed my eyes and tried to think of a snarky remark, but snapped my mouth shut. Damn him and his after-the-ballet sex talk. Gabe grew quiet, which made me nervous.
I'm sorry I hurt you.
Don't be. I chalked it up to a learning experience. I'm over it.
Are you?
We've already covered this. Water under the table. Bridge. Water under the table, and I can still drink you under the bridge. I turned too fast and teetered, only to be caught around the middle by his strong arms. Pressed against his muscular chest, I glanced up a split second before his lips came down on mine. Unlike the quick exchanges I'd shared with Justin, Gabe kissed me like a man with a PhD in seduction. He cupped my face and invaded my mouth. My defenses crumpled along with my knees. A sound of surrender escaped me, but rather than claiming victory, Gabe retreated. Something wrong? I whispered, holding the counter for support.
I'm beat.
Gabe's hand brushed over my hip. I wanted to kiss him again or hold him or invite him to my room. On the other hand, I wanted to throat punch him and toss him out of my house. I couldn't go down this road with him again. I wouldn't survive it. As if he'd read my mind, Gabe frowned and ran his hand over the back of his neck.
Good night, Maggie.
Good night. Drunk and exhausted, I should have fallen asleep the moment I closed my eyes. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and tried to think about anything but the man in the room across the hall.
Chapter 9. Gabe. Fire shot close enough to my hand to singe the hair on my knuckles. Cursing, I grabbed the tongs and moved the stakes away from the flare-up. No matter what I did, I couldn't put out the flames. Son of a bitch. I eased back from the fire. Hey, Leo, I could use a spray bottle out here. Don't use water. It'll extinguish the coals or get ash in the meat. My brother pushed me out of the way and placed the cover on the grill. I've never had a problem with it before. He smirked. Carbon seals in the juices. Don't be afraid of a little fire. I can handle the heat. I downed half my beer. My mother would probably call it a sin, but Leo was my favorite brother. Joe, the eldest and the golden child, had treated me more like an underling than an equal. Leo, born 10 months after me, was more like a best friend than a sibling. I trusted him to give it to me straight. You look like shit. He opened the grill to check on the steaks. I glanced over his rooftop patio. He lived in a quintessential French Quarter apartment, an old mansion that was later turned into a multi-family home. I envied his rooftop oasis, but I had almost twice the square footage. Have you spoken to Ma? She called the other day, something about a family dinner. Figures. I made a mental note to speak with the rest of my brothers soon, or I'd have to face them as a group. The three of them, plus my parents, would be a verbal bloodbath. You gonna tell me, or do I have to call Ma? Could you keep an eye on the steaks? I need another beer for this. I shook my empty bottle. Bro. Spill it. I looked him square in the eye. I have a kid. He froze for a couple of seconds and laughed. Holy shit, man. Congrats. But you know they make condoms to prevent this sort of thing. As it turns out, condoms are only 99% effective. Leo plopped down on a lounge chair. What are you gonna do with a kid? Raise her? I turned back to the grill, but my thoughts drifted to Maggie. I should call to let her know I'll be late. Not for nothing, but do you even know how to change a diaper? Leo shuddered. Yeah, smartass, I do. Never mind that a 13-year-old had taught me how. How often do you see her? He'd spoken as if from experience, but turned his attention to the rooftops of the French Quarter. I nudged his shoulder. Something you want to tell me? Leo startled, but tried to cover it with a dumbass smile. Don't put your shit on me. This is all you. Right. Ella lives with me. Where's her mother? He cocked his head. Who's her mother? She works on a cruise ship. I told him the rest of the story while I pulled the steaks off the grill, but I left out one tiny detail, Chantal's name. I needed to get through the I have a kid part before I dropped another bomb on him. Jesus, Gabe, is she coming back? No, don't care. I'm going for full custody. Besides, abandoning her child? She's nuts. Lucky for me, I'd ended it before things got too serious. Not soon enough. He stood and walked to the table. The timing could be better, and the circumstances suck, but I don't regret having a kid. Yeah, I get that. His voice cracked. What's up with him? I took a seat and unwrapped my baked potato. Sure you don't have anything you want to tell me? I'm good. He picked out a salad. Where's the little bundle of joy? Maggie's watching her tonight. My stomach twisted. I'd finally come to the subject I needed to discuss. Maggie? As in Rebecca's sister Maggie? The one and only. Shit, Gabe. I thought Pops told us to stay away from Joe's kids. It's been a year. Nothing's happened. I shoved a piece of steak into my mouth, chewed, and took a swig of beer. Besides, you and I both know Pop's prime suspect had an ironclad alibi. Leo furrowed his brow and glanced away. The moment he put it all together, his mouth fell open. For fuck's sake! Tell me the mother of your kid isn't Chantal Dubois. Guilty. He dragged his hand down his face. Jesus! Does Pops know? No, and I'd like to keep it that way for now. Forever, if I can help it. My father wouldn't need to worry about lung cancer. He'd drop dead of a coronary if he knew I'd slept with the person he suspected of causing my brother's accident. Do you think she got knocked up on purpose? He pegged me with a glare. Hell if I know. I mean, I suited up every time. Accidents happen, I guess. Where does Maggie fit into this? Leo consumed his meal like he hadn't seen food in weeks. I'm going to marry her. He choked on his potato. I pushed my plate to the side and set my elbows on the table. It was that, move home, or lose my bar. I need something stronger before we get into this. Leo finished his beer, went inside, and returned with a bottle of Jack and 2 glasses. A little birdie told me you're planning to take over for Pops. A little birdie named Enzo. 3 years younger, Enzo made it his life's goal to know everyone's business. It's not as if I have a choice. Pops isn't doing well. Leo poured 2 shots. I'd like to believe we all have a choice, but I know better. I downed the whiskey. I'll learn the ropes, do what I have to, and get all of us out as soon as I can. And if you can't, I can. I poured myself another and stared into the amber liquid. The Marchionni family had been tied to the Cosa Nostra since the 1800s, but the internet, more savvy investigation techniques, and RICO laws made organized crime even riskier. Thankfully, the majority of our wealth came from legitimate business ventures nowadays. We could stand on our own. The question was, would the other families allow it? Gabe, not for nothing, but you don't have anything to prove. Joe's dead. The rivalry's over. No good will come from trying to fill his shoes. His words stung like rubbing alcohol on road rash. That's not what this is about. Joe was good with the status quo. I'm not. Fuck the sins of our father. We're going legit. I'm behind you 100% on that. He furrowed his brow and took another bite of steak. You got something else you want to say? I half expected him to bring up more psychobabble bullshit about needing Mommy and Daddy's approval. Are you sure about this thing with Maggie? I love her. Always have. The words rolled off my tongue without hesitation. No shit. But last time I checked, she wanted your head on a pike. How'd you get her to agree to marry you? I knocked back my second shot. I haven't asked her yet. Leo rubbed his forehead, a habit he shared with my father, and a sure sign I'd lost him. I will, but I have to tell her why I broke things off the first time around. She needs to know what she's walking into. And I have to convince her she's still in love with me. You mean tell her about the business? He set his fork down. Yep. Bad idea. He pressed his hand to his gut. Rebecca changed when she found out. To hear Ma tell it, her postpartum depression had more to do with Joe coming clean than hormones. I folded my arms. I'd heard my mother's side of the story, but I'd also spent time with Joe's wife. She'd known the truth long before her youngest son was born. That's bullshit. It's been years since you and Maggie broke up. How well do you know her now? What makes you think she won't run to the cops? Or worse, write a story about it in the Picayune? Good point. I doubted she'd go to the police, but I hadn't considered the paper. But she deserves to know the truth. Even if she throws me out of my ass, she's raising the next generation of Marchionni men. Sooner or later, the business will touch them. Unless you get us out free and clear. Free and clear's a long shot. I'll settle for legit without bloodshed.
Chapter 10. Maggie. Children's laughter and the scent of fresh-baked cookies filled the house. But nothing cheered me up. Though I couldn't put my finger on what had me in such a foul mood, all signs pointed to Gabe Marchionni. I struggled to focus on the Bourbon Street Bad Boys Club proposal I'd drafted for Marlena. It wasn't my best work. It reeked of passive aggression, as if I'd taken all of my frustrations with Gabe, his family, and life in general, and wrapped them up in one tidy document. I held my breath and hit send on the email. In the week since Gabe had arrived, he'd worked nights at the bar and days with his father. At least that's what he told me. He could have been anywhere with anyone, and I'd never be the wiser. Not that it's any of my business. Our kiss haunted me day and night. I'd tried to blame my response on the whiskey, but it was a lie. I'd wanted it. I'd wanted him. My phone rang. The name and number on the screen caused my pulse to race. I'd only sent the proposal a few minutes ago. Marlena either loved or hated it. I pressed answer. My boss's voice boomed through the connection before I had a chance to say hello. Maggie, I swear on the life of my Christian Louboutins, you have outdone yourself. I'm glad you liked it. I hurried out the back door on the off chance Gabe had woken. I didn't want him to overhear the conversation. Is there anything you want changed? Not a thing, darling. Get me what you've outlined and I'll find a place for you on staff. Telecommuting, of course, with a raise and benefits. Whatever you want, just get the story. I'd waited a year to hear her say those words. A regular paycheck and health insurance would solve a lot of my problems, but the articles could cause a whole lot more. No, screw my guilty conscience. I can do this. I've already started working on it. Good to hear. I'd like to run the first article the day of the Mardi Gras Gala. Can you pull it together by then? 3 weeks? Is she kidding? That shouldn't be a problem. Perfect. Keep me posted. I'm counting on you. Marlena disconnected the call. I hung my head and went inside. On days like this, I self-medicated with carbs. Homemade carbs filled with chocolate. I'd already eaten half a dozen cookies, but after the call, I ate 3 more. My stomach churned. The sugar hadn't eased my stress. In short, I still felt like crap. To atone for my food sins and save my waistline, I resorted to angry cleaning. Nothing like taking your frustrations out on the carpet. I ran the vacuum down the hall, banging it into the master bedroom door a couple of times before moving on. Oh, so sorry, sir. Did I wake you? Maggie, Gabe called over the noise. Ignoring him, I turned the corner and redid the living room floor. Maggie. The vacuum went dead. Oh, no, he did not. I rounded on him with my hands on my hips. What? Still holding the cord, he frowned. Would you mind doing that later? I smirked and let my gaze travel from his face to his bare feet and up again. You look like 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. I feel like it. Your hangover isn't my concern. I have to clean the house this morning. Gabe shook his head and walked into the kitchen. Realizing he wasn't going to plug the vacuum back into the wall, I huffed and followed him. Look, if you're going to stay here, we need to lay down some ground rules. Like not running the vacuum before 10? He stuffed a cookie into his mouth. Like from this point forward, we're friends, which means hands off. I had no idea why I'd said that, but my heart broke a little. Friends, got it. He ate 2 more cookies. I pulled the plate away from him. There are kids in the house. They hear and see everything. You're an adult. If you want to eat cookies for breakfast, that's your business, but it isn't setting a good example. I'll be the model of a responsible adult. He stuck his head in the fridge, pulled out the milk, and took a swig from the carton. I made a sound in the back of my throat and balled my fists. He took one look at me and laughed, spitting a mouthful of milk into the sink.
Relax, Mags. I'm the only person in the house that drinks regular milk.
You're trying to piss me off. I closed my eyes and counted to 10.
Not really, but it's so damned easy.
He chuckled and put the milk away.
You shouldn't cuss either.
His brows rose.
Pot calling the kettle black on that one?
I pinched the bridge of my nose. I'm serious.
I got it. No touching, no drinking from the milk carton, no cookies for breakfast, no potty mouth. Anything else?
Yes. You don't need to ask my permission to go out, but I'd appreciate knowing when you're leaving and about when you'll be back. I planned dinner last night and you didn't come home before going to the bar. I had Ella all day.
I told you it would be a long one. Asked if you wanted me to take her to my folks.
I know, and I appreciate it. Still, a phone call would have been nice.
Any more rules?
Don't bring women here. I regretted it as soon as I'd said it.
The humor faded from his eyes. Got it.
I'd crossed a line. He was a player, but he knew better than to bring the game near the kids. Now that's settled, can I get you some breakfast? I used food like an olive branch. Hopefully, an omelet would make him forget all about my crankiness.
No, I'm good.
Gabe held the coffee cup with 2 hands, with his shoulder slumped forward as if trying to garner every ounce of warmth from the mug. I moved closer. The sitter's coming tonight. I made plans last week.
I'm off tonight. I can watch the kids unless you're worried I'll corrupt them. You know, cookies for dinner with chasers from the carton.
Are you sure you'll be up for it? You look rough. I set my hand on his forehead. He pulled away.
I'll be fine once I get some sleep.
Sorry. I'll try to keep it down in the mornings until you get into a normal routine.
Going on another internet date?
Girls' night with Shauna, if you must know. I refilled his coffee.
Thanks.
He hunched over his cup again.
Like I said, I can handle the kids.
I'll cancel the sitter. I left to put the vacuum away. Try as I might, I couldn't figure out why I let him get under my skin. Then again, I'd become rather adept at lying to myself. I wandered into my room for a moment's peace and to get as far away from him as possible. As soon as I sat, the doorbell rang. The dog started barking, and the kids came down the stairs like a herd of elephants. By the time I'd returned to the front room, Chloe had opened the door and had ushered my mother into the house. Mimi! Ryan launched himself at his grandmother. Mom? Wondering where Gabe had gone, I glanced toward the kitchen. No matter how temporary the situation or the circumstances, my mother would not approve of me shacking up with a man. She hugged the kids and gave the dog a quick pat, all while surveying the house. By the time she got to me, her smile had faded. She smoothed her designer jacket and patted her perfectly coiffed hair.
Mary Margaret.
My heart sank along with my mother's smile. The house was as clean as it was ever going to be, but it would never be enough. I would never be enough. So good to see you. I gave her a half hug and locked eyes with Gabe, who'd chosen that moment to step into the room. Who are you? My mother tilted her head as if trying to place the face. I'd managed to keep my previous relationship with Gabe from my mom, mostly because she never asked. However, she had met Gabe at least twice, once at Rebecca's wedding and again at her funeral. Both occasions had been emotional days for all involved, but I'd bet my right arm my mother had recognized him. This is my Uncle Gabe. He lives with us now. Chloe took Gabe's hand. The little girl beamed. Uncle Gabe, this is my Mimi. Her real name is Nadine. I prayed to God for a lightning bolt to strike me dead. This cannot be happening. He cleared his throat.
Nadine, nice to see you again.
She paled beneath her expertly applied makeup. I set my hand on my mother's shoulder to draw her attention away from him. You remember Gabe. He's Joe's brother.
Oh, yes. She forced a smile. What brings you to Algiers Point? I'm staying here while some work is done on my house in the quarter, he said without hesitation.
I forced my shoulders to relax. Gabe had lied so smoothly. I wondered if he actually planned to renovate his place. Mom, I wasn't expecting you.
Isn't today Chloe's recital?
No, it's next weekend. I motioned for her to sit.
Mary Margaret, I'm quite sure you told me it was today. You need to get yourself together. Buy a planner.
Mimi, can I spend the night with you? Chloe pressed her hands together in front of her chest. Please.
Of course, darling. Go pack a bag for you and Ryan.
Nadine smiled as if the matter had been settled regardless of my thoughts.
I'll go help them pack.
Gabe lifted Ryan and followed Chloe out of the room.
Nice to see you again, Nadine called after him, then turned her gaze on me. Her lips pursed and she shook her head ever so slightly. Please tell me that man isn't staying here. It's Joe and Rebecca's house, I whispered. That doesn't give him the right to stay here. You know how I feel about the Marchionni family. They're responsible for your sister's death.
Joe and Rebecca had an accident. I hated that she'd never accepted the truth. Besides, it's only for a short while and he'll be on his way.
Good. The last thing you need to do is get a crush on someone like him.
Nadine sniffed and turned her head. He's not my type, Mother. I sighed, remembering the year Gabe had been exactly my type.
Nadine patted my hand. No, he isn't. A man like that dates women like Rebecca. He'd never be happy with you.
I know. I smiled to reassure my mother, but something fragile inside me curled into a tight ball and died.
Chapter 11. Gabe. I hadn't seen Maggie since the debacle with her mother that morning, and I thought I had it bad. Nadine made my mom look like Mary fucking Poppins. I listened at her door for signs of life and knocked. Mags, what time are you heading out? I'm not going anywhere, she called from inside the room. Why? I frowned and set my hand on the knob. Can I come in? No, I don't feel well. Her voice sounded nasally, like she'd spent the afternoon crying. I'm coming in. Ignoring her puffy eyes, I sat on the edge of the bed. What happened to girls' night? I canceled. She blew her nose into a tissue, then set it with a pile of others on the nightstand. I pressed my hand to her forehead. You don't have a fever? That's good, I guess. Come on, get up. I stood and tugged her hand. I refused to let her wallow. She needed cheering up, and I needed dinner. A win-win in my book. Why? She sank deeper into the covers. We're going out. I released her, flipped the light on, and opened her closet. You'll feel better once you're out of the house. What? No, what are you doing? Get out of there. I didn't hear a rule about not going into each other's stuff. Get in the shower. I'm starving. I'm not hungry. She hopped out of bed and positioned herself between me and her clothes. Score one for me. She's out of bed. I stared into her blue eyes and grinned. Please. I hate eating alone. Where's Ella? My mother came for her and Zach a couple of hours ago. I may need the National Guard to get her back, but Zach will call if she tries to take Ella out of the country. Maggie hung her head. Fine. Where are we going? Don't know yet. I knew exactly where I'd take her. She glanced between me and the bed. Give me 15 minutes to get dressed. No way would I give her the chance to crawl back under the blankets. I'm not leaving you until you're in the shower. Fine. She gave me an eye roll that put Chloe to shame and shambled to the bathroom. You're adorable when you pout. Go to hell. She slammed the door. My father was right. There were definitely worse things than marrying Maggie Guthrie. My phone rang and I answered without looking at the screen. Marchionni. Gabe, it's Chantal. I need to talk to you. I glanced at the bathroom door and walked into the living room. Talk. I got a call from your lawyer. I know. I'll sign the papers, but I need something from you. I stared at the ceiling. My attorney had told me to expect a cash grab. Go on. Your family ruined my life. I lost everything. I want what's owed to me. I told you I would set you up in a place close by so you could be a part of Ella's life. No. I can't. No. Right, you can't be a mother, but you expect me to buy my daughter? How much? 500,000. Sign the papers, Chantal. I disconnected the call and slid the phone into my pocket. I could get the money, but it would mean dipping into the savings I'd set aside to buy my bar from the Marchionni Corporation. My only other choice was to go to my father, but Satan would build an igloo before that happened. Maggie walked into the hall. "Everything okay?" One look at her and my frustration melted. Even in jeans and a t-shirt, with almost no makeup, she stole my breath. "It is now." "Yeah, okay." She gave me side-eye. Until that morning, I'd never understood why she couldn't take a compliment. When I'd overheard the tail end of the conversation between her and her mother, it had taken all of my restraint not to tell the woman to go to hell. No mother should speak to their daughter like that. But I'd recently learned it took more than giving birth to make a woman a mother. No wonder my ending this the way I did had hurt her so deeply. She had to know I was lying about my reasons and had filled in the blanks with God knows what. I decided then and there to make it my mission to make her see her beauty. "You look nice." Maggie shrugged. "It's as good as it's going to get." I opened the front door for her. "Looks good to me." She ignored my remark. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." Maggie's shoulders tensed, but she got into my car. I kept my mouth shut during the drive. She glanced in my direction when we went over the Crescent City Bridge and exited on Camp Street, but didn't say a word. The woman needed to let loose and have fun, and there was no better place to do it than the French Quarter. "It's late. Most kitchens close at 10. She sounded like she wanted to bolt. I know a place that stays open late. The food's great, but the owner's a dick. Maggie shot me a dubious look. "I'm kidding. Trust me." I pulled into a parking spot behind the building. "This is reserved for owner. There's a sign." "I won't get towed." Maggie motioned to the line of people stretching out the main door and down Ursuline Street. "We'll never get a table." "You're going to have to learn to trust me." I ducked into the service entrance. "Uh-huh." She glanced around the busy kitchen and smiled. "Gabe!" Enzo embraced me, something he hadn't done since our brother's funeral. I didn't trust it. "How are you, man? I heard you're a dad. Congrats!" I slapped him on the back harder than necessary and pulled out of the hug. "Thanks. Ma called the entire family?" "Yeah, you could say that." Enzo smirked. "As for the other half of the news, good luck. I'll believe it when I see it." My mouth went dry. Had my mother told people I was engaged, too? Recognition dawned on my brother's face. "Maggie Guthrie? My God, it is you. It's been a while. How are you doing with all this?" Maggie's smile faded. "I'm all right. You should stop in and visit the kids." "I've been meaning to. I'm sorry, without Joe." He drew her into a tight hug and kissed her cheek. "You're a good woman. What are you doing with this loser? I never would have guessed he'd be shacking up with you." "Why don't you quit hitting on my date and get us a table, will you?" I laced my fingers with hers. Much to my surprise, Maggie didn't pull her hand free. Enzo considered the two of us for a moment and shook his head. "We're standing room only. Let me see what I can do." "You do that. Technically, I'm the owner of this fine establishment, and I have the parking place to prove it." I couldn't resist giving him a hard time. My brother nodded toward Maggie as if daring me to push my luck. I winked, and he stormed away. He might play the role of perfect host, but I knew better. Beneath that chef coat beat the heart of a man who put his ambitions above all else. She furrowed her brow. "What was that about?" "Parking here's a bitch." "Uh-huh." She opened her mouth to speak, but a waitress came to show us to our table. Maggie ordered a drink as soon as we sat. Between her knee bobbing under the table and her fidgeting with her phone, her anxiety began to rub off on me. I clasped my hands to keep from reaching for her bouncing leg. "Everything's good here, but the steak Florentine is off the charts." She glanced at me and sighed. "I'll have a salad and the gumbo." Not only had she decided on the fastest items on the menu, I recognized the look in her eyes. She wanted to leave. I had to do something, so I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "I like your hair down." "Thanks." The server delivered our cocktails. "The usual, Gabe?" "Not tonight. We'll both have the house salad and a bowl of gumbo." I latched onto the glass like a drowning man gripped a life preserver. Maggie took a large drink and seemed to look everywhere except at me. This is ridiculous. I leaned closer. "Are you still pissed at me?" "No. Why?" "You haven't said much since we got in the car." "I'm sorry. I have a lot on my mind. Enzo looks good, though. This is his place? Her question surprised me. Enzo was one of the hottest restaurants in the quarter. Yeah. You never been here? No, I don't come to this part of town often. She turned her attention to her drink. You used to love the quarter. What changed? I don't know, Gabe. Maybe it had something to do with not wanting to run into you after we broke up? The verbal bitch slap left me reeling. I'd never get anywhere with her if I didn't tell her the truth. I'm sorry. If it's any consolation, I couldn't walk a block without passing a place that reminded me of you. Of us. She stared at me for a long moment before glancing away. I can't talk about this. Not tonight. Not here. I understand, but listen. I've been thinking a lot about our situation. We have a situation? She sat back and folded her arms. I'd never been so grateful for a meal to arrive. It gave me something else to put in my mouth besides my foot. Another time, then. Let's eat. The woman was killing me one sharp word at a time. I wasn't stupid back then. I knew breaking things off would hurt her, but I'd done it for her own good. She deserved so much better than me. Hell, she still did, but things were different now. I was finally in a position to break free of the Cosa Nostra and be a better man. We remained quiet during dinner. Uncomfortable, but not unbearable, thanks to the noise from the bar crowd in the adjacent room. By the time the server cleared our plates, Maggie had finished her second drink. Her mood had improved. Okay, you can say it. What? I thought I knew she'd say I told you so, but I didn't want to risk missing the mark and pissing her off. I told you so. I needed to get out of the house. My freaking stomach fluttered. Whether she cared to admit it or not, I knew her inside and out. I leaned across the table and cupped my ear. What? Are you saying I was right? Don't get used to it. I'm sure it won't happen again. Come on. I threw some cash on the table and pulled her to her feet. Where are we going now? Already skeptical? I made a tisking sound, set my hand on the small of her back, and led her to the bar in the next room. What's that noise? Sounds like someone strangling a raccoon with a cat. That would be karaoke. Maggie slid onto a stool. I snaked my arm around her and ordered another round of drinks. Whiskey on the rocks for her, water for me. After working in a bar for years, I knew the drill. If I didn't make it obvious I had a date, the women would circle. I refused to risk sending her fragile self-confidence into the toilet. She leaned close, still half shouting. Why are we here? Rubbing my cheek against hers, I spoke into her ear. To dance our cares away. Dance to karaoke? No way. She turned her attention to the half-dressed woman on the stage singing Don't Stop Believin'. Come on, Mags, it'll be fun. You do remember that I can't dance, don't you? I laughed, knowing good and well the woman had moves. Then you leave me no choice. Stay here. I'll be right back. Where are you going? I winked and walked to the edge of the stage. The older woman cueing the next song glanced up at me and smiled. A little flirting, name-dropping, and a well-placed compliment later, she agreed to let me cut in line. Maggie shifted her weight on the stool and chewed her lip. She seemed uneasy, but I doubted she'd run away before I finished the song. Mic in hand, I made my way on stage. 3 notes into the song, Maggie's spine stiffened and her gorgeous blue eyes widened. Not surprising, considering I'd chosen to sing When I Was Your Man by Bruno Mars. Not only was he one of her favorite artists, the lyrics expressed my feelings better than I ever could. Except for the part about wishing her new guy would buy her flowers and hold her hand. Fuck that. I love singing in front of a crowd. I'd sung and played guitar or piano at my father's clubs, including my bar since high school. Getting the right pitch and rasp to pull off Bruno Mars presented a challenge. The smoky air, along with the growing tension in my chest, helped roughen my voice. Not to mention, Maggie's flaming red cheeks and the glisten in her eyes urged me on. How is it possible she's more beautiful now than when we were together? Women swarmed the stage, but I kept my eyes on my girl. Halfway through the song, I wished I'd chosen a shorter tune. I wanted nothing more than to kiss away every tear she'd ever, or would ever, shed. As if he had a bad timing detector, Enzo came out of the kitchen and sidled next to Maggie. The bastard took her attention off me by draping Mardi Gras beads over her head. My heart skipped a beat. If Enzo told her about my father's mandate, I'd never get her to trust me. Thank Christ the song ended. I fought my way back to Maggie and took her chin between my thumb and forefinger. She met my eyes and licked her lips, sending a bolt of electricity through me. I leaned in and brushed my lips across hers before she had time to argue. She tasted like peaches and whiskey, intoxicating. Enzo smirked and turned to speak to the woman at his right. Maggie, on the other hand, gave me a look that promised pain. I needed to get her out of there before she laid into me in front of my brother. Let's go home. She tugged her purse on her shoulder and marched for the door like a woman on a mission. I took advantage of the situation and winked at Enzo, who looked as stunned as if I'd groped the Virgin Mary herself. So what if he'd misread the situation? If he kept his damn mouth shut, I'd take it. Outside, Maggie rounded on me. I can't go home with you, and don't kiss me again without permission. I'm staying at your house. It's a no-brainer you're going home with me. And I'll be sure to ask next time my lips come in contact with your body. I used my bedroom voice on the last bit. I liked her drunk, but she was fun as hell when she was angry. Don't you dare speak to me in that tone. You don't know me anymore. We're practically strangers. Things are complicated enough without adding physical stuff in the mix. Strangers who know every square inch of each other's bodies. You're right. As much as I wanted to rekindle things with Maggie, I knew better than to push her. Not yet, anyway. How about a walk? I should check in with my staff. Sure, why not? She folded and unfolded her arms before stuffing her hands in her pockets. The woman had something to say, and from the looks of it, something I wouldn't like. What's on your mind? You had to pick that song, didn't you? I stopped and turned to her. I couldn't have expressed my feelings better if I'd tried. If she'd rolled her eyes any harder, they would have done a 360. Mags, I'm serious. I'm ashamed of the way I handled things with you. I never should have... She walked away. Maggie didn't want to talk about it. Point taken. So was it good for you? What? The kiss. She punched my arm. Hard. I should have turned my head when you came at me all puckered up. My morals go out the window when I'm around you. Don't blame me for your lack of morals. Blame the whiskey. I chuckled to cover my frustration and guided her up Ursuline toward Bourbon.
Chapter 12. Maggie. People crowded the sidewalks, and more would arrive in the coming weeks. Fat Tuesday, the biggest party in the city, would swell the city's population by millions. Walking with Gabe here reminded me of better days when we'd been happy together. Although much of our time together had involved a bed, we'd spent many hours enjoying the French Quarter. We entered his bar on Bourbon Street and ran into a wall of noise. The body heat alone made the space 20 degrees warmer than the sidewalk. Gabe guided me to a stool behind the bar and said something to the female bartender. She glanced at me and nodded. Recognizing the tall brunette, I grinned and waved at Gabe's cousin, Jesse. He pulled his phone from his pocket and frowned at the screen. Trouble? I motioned to his cell. No. Leaning in close, he fondled the beads between my breasts.
I need to go in back and check tomorrow's delivery schedule. Are you okay here for a few minutes?
I'm good here with Jesse. I love people watching.
10 minutes tops.
Gabe winked and disappeared around the corner. I startled when a man waved a $10 bill in front of my face. Oh, I don't work here.
I need a vodka cranberry, he said louder.
I waved at Jessie but couldn't get her attention. While I didn't know how to run the register or how much the drinks cost, I could pour a proper vodka cranberry. I hopped off the stool and pulled the brand name vodka from the top shelf. The customer nodded. The liquor bottle in one hand, the dispenser in the other, I poured a long ounce into the glass of ice and topped it off with juice. The technique gave the illusion of equal parts juice and alcohol. I finished with a lime wedge and set the drink on the bar. Damn, girl, good pour. Jessie smiled and took the cash from the bar. Thanks. Gabe taught me eons ago. Bar tips helped pay for my last 2 years of college. Well, brands are $8, top shelves are 10, beers are 5 in the bottle and 4 from the tap. Everything's cash. Call me if you can't find something. Jessie winked and took another order. I shrugged and turned to the next customer. Gabe had paid my bills. Helping out tonight seemed fair. A few moments later, the rush ended and Jessie nudged my shoulder. "We're looking for another bartender. It's that time of year. If you want a job, talk to Gabe." I grinned as she pulled a bottle of whiskey from beneath the counter. This would be a great way to get info for my article. "I'll talk to him about it." As if afraid I'd change my mind, Jessie nodded toward the back. "If you're serious, ask him now. I could use some help later this week." "Sure, why not?" I turned on my heel and hurried down the hall to find Gabe, but slowed at the sound of voices.
"It's all there. There's no need to count it."
Gabe's tone made the hairs on my arms stand on end. He didn't sound pleased.
"You're too smart to short me, Marchionni. I'll see you next month."
I had no idea what I'd overheard, but I knew it couldn't be good. I ducked into what looked like an employee break room and fiddled with the coffee maker.
"Maggie?"
I turned to find Gabe and a uniformed New Orleans police officer staring. My heart thudded against my sternum. Had he paid off a cup? "There you are. Could you show me how to use this? It's not like the one at home."
"I'll leave you to it."
The cop grinned and continued down the hall. Gabe moved beside me and lowered his voice.
"How much of that did you overhear?"
I swallowed hard. More than I should have.
"I slip him a little something to avoid problems."
I reached for the counter and realized my hands were shaking. "Are you finished with tomorrow's orders?"
"Almost."
He embraced me.
"You're trembling. Mags, it looked far dirtier than it is."
I plastered on a smile and ducked out of his arms. "I'll help Jessie until you're finished." Gabe sighed and motioned to the door. I slid behind the bar and tried to convince myself I'd overreacted. Heck, how many times had I commented on the crooked politicians in the city?
"2 Coronas, no lime."
A familiar voice called from behind me. I turned, and Justin's eyes went wide.
"Maggie?"
He looked as if he'd swallowed a bee.
"You work here?"
A dark-haired woman slid her arm around Justin's waist and kissed his ear. He went from pale to red to a shade of green. "Who's your friend?" My throat tightened, making my voice sound clipped. "I'm Denise, his wife. Who the hell are you?" My brain stuttered. I took a step back, bumping into Gabe in the process. "This is Justin and his wife, Denise." Gabe's eyes darkened and the small muscle in his jaw flexed. Justin looked unimpressed, but Denise stared at Gabe like he was the crab legs on an all-you-can-eat buffet. Justin laughed and kissed the woman's cheek.
"This is Maggie from Accounts Receivable. She's upset because we have a strict no moonlighting rule. Isn't that right, Maggie?"
"Yes." I turned to take another drink order.
"Table just opened up. Grab it. I'll get the drinks."
He patted her backside. Denise cast me one more dirty look and stormed away. Turning my head, I swallowed hard and willed the tears to stay in my eyes. No way would I let the cheating jerk see me cry, angry tears or not. Gabe pulled me aside.
"Are you okay?"
Glaring, Justin whispered,
"Really, Maggie? This guy?"
My mouth fell open. For the life of me, I couldn't understand where he got off judging me. Besides the fact he was married, we'd only dated a few times. Something snapped. It could have been the pen in Gabe's hand, or his last shred of patience. He leaped over the bar and grabbed Justin by the collar. He clawed at Gabe's arms, struggling to break free. Nearby patrons scurried away from danger. In the process, they spilled drinks and alerted others to the situation. I ran around the bar and set my hand on Gabe's bicep. "Let him go. He's not worth it." Gabe glanced at me and shoved Justin a foot or so. It didn't matter as long as the argument ended without violence. Straightening his shirt, Justin muttered under his breath,
"Fucking bitch."
The right hook caught Justin in the jaw, sending him careening into the bar. I gasped and took a step away from Gabe. I'd never seen him so angry. For that matter, I'd never seen someone punch someone else in the face. Struggling to gain his footing on the wet floor, Justin put his hand to his jaw and glared. At some point during the scuffle, his wife returned. "What the hell happened?" "Call the police," Justin whined and spat blood on the floor. "She doesn't work in accounting, does she?" Denise pointed at me. Are you cheating on me with that?
No, damn it, look at her. Gabe's expression grew dangerous. Get the hell out of my bar.
Tears running down his cheeks, Justin screamed,
I'm going to press charges.
Gabe chuckled and looked over the crowd.
Anyone see who hit this jackass?
Patrons responded with laughter, several no's and shakes of the head. Most of the onlookers went back to partying while others watched with amused grins. Watching Justin turn and walk out, Gabe drew me to his side.
You okay?
I think so. Denise gave Gabe one last longing look, glared at me, and followed her husband. I can't believe you hit him. My voice cracked. Gabe looked down at me and winked.
I can't believe you didn't.
If anyone walked into the room, they'd never have guessed a fight had broken out moments before. The music played, laughter filled the air, and life went on. I blew out a relieved breath and pressed closer to Gabe. As much as I wanted to be irritated with him for resorting to violence, I couldn't. No one had stood up for me before. In a strange way, I felt safe. The short drive home gave me enough time to wrap my brain around Justin cheating on his wife with me. How could I have been so wrong about him? He seems so nice. Why am I always someone's second best? Why am I never good enough?
He's an idiot.
Gabe shifted the car into fifth gear and sped down the highway. I'm the idiot. I rubbed my eyes.
Bullshit. Even if you'd known he was married, and obviously you didn't, he's the one that made a vow, not you.
His eyes on the road, Gabe squeezed my hand. Thanks. I turned to him. You shouldn't have hit him. We should have left. What if someone would have called the police?
I couldn't stand there and let him disrespect you. And I'm not worried about the cops.
Because he'd bought their cooperation. I pushed the thought from my mind. Jesse offered me a job.
You were great when you used to help me out. Interested?
Thankful to have something to think about besides cheaters or fights or bribes, I smiled. Maybe. I could use the money. I'd have to work days and find a sitter for Ryan.
I can take him with me to my folks. My mother's already watching Ella. I'm sure she'd love having both of them.
You need help during the night shift, don't you?
Not necessarily. Most of my staff hate working before the sun sets. The tips aren't as good.
Gabe pulled into the driveway, cut the engine, and brushed his fingers across my cheek.
Look at me.
I turned, and before I talked myself out of it, I kissed him. Be it the stress of the night, Justin's dishonesty, my mother's comment, or the fact I'd wanted to jump him from the moment he rang my doorbell, I wanted this. I wanted him, if only for the night.
Chapter 13. Gabe. What the hell are you doing, Marchionni? Slow it the fuck down. As much as I wanted to carry Maggie into the bedroom and make her forget the name of every man on the planet except mine, it was wrong. So damned wrong. Sure, she'd kiss me, and judging by the way her hand shook when she tried to unlock the door, she had sex on the brain. However, I wasn't the kind of guy who enjoyed screwing a woman who had someone else in her mind. That took the key from her. Let me. Once inside, she wrapped her arms around my neck and tugged me down for another kiss. I had to put a stop to this before I gave in and did something she'd regret. Slow down, sweetheart. I ran my fingers through the length of her hair. My words seemed to sober her. She took a step back and nodded. You're right. I'm just... I drew her into my arms. You've had a rough night. Let's go watch a movie. Have you spent time with Ella's mother since you showed up here? Where the hell did that come from? No. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be such a drama queen. You're far from a drama queen. I thanked God I'd stopped things from getting any hotter. No matter how much I wanted to lick every inch of her luscious body, I had to earn her trust before any nakedness happened. Put on sweats and one of those giant t-shirts. I'll meet you in your room in 10 minutes. Sweats? It'll help me keep my hands to myself. I sat and unlaced my boots. Maggie stood there staring at me as if I'd taken off my pants instead of my socks. This woman's killing me. A grin tugged the corners of my mouth. Sweats? No. 10 minutes. She turned and headed down the hall. I walked to my room and listened to the dozen or so voicemails Chantal had left over the previous 24 hours. For the most part, they all contained the same demands: money, money, and more money. But her latest text made my blood run cold. A friend sent me this. Thought you preferred tall brunettes to chubby blondes. Does she know what you do for a living? She seems nice. It'd be a shame if something happened to her. I clicked on the attachment. Son of a bitch. Someone had taken a pic of me and Maggie at Enzo's. Chantal had gone from using Ella to blackmail me to threatening Maggie. This has to stop. I knew people who could put an end to the situation and to Chantal permanently. One call to my father's guys, and I'd never have to worry about her again. But I couldn't do that to Ella. As much as I'd grown to despise the woman, I couldn't ignore the fact she was the mother of my child. I walked into the garage and called the one person I could count on for advice that wouldn't end in bloodshed: Leo. Bro, do you own a clock? The grit in his voice told me I'd woken him. Chantal upped her game. I checked to make sure Maggie hadn't come into the kitchen and relayed the latest drama to my brother. You think she's following you? Leo sounded wide awake and as freaked out as I felt. No clue. She told me she was leaving town, but she could have someone else following me. Either way, I need to know where she is. I'll find out. He paused and lowered his voice. What are you going to tell Maggie? I imagined telling her the truth about Chantal, the threats, the family business, all of it. I had a good idea how she would react, and it made my blood run cold. What if she threw me out? I couldn't handle it if she never spoke to me again. Nothing. I can't protect her if she tosses me out of my ass. Leo remained quiet. You there? I'm thinking. He sighed. You two aren't together 24/7. What happens when she goes out? My first thought was to cancel her side gig at the bar and order her to stay in the damned house, but that would go over as well as a pregnant nun at mass. I'll call in some favors, get her some security. If you meant what you said about going legit, let me make the calls. You need to keep your nose clean. Start the way you intend to fly, bro. And stop paying off dirty cops. I ran my hand down my face. Thanks, Leo. Just make sure they're invisible. Will do. He disconnected. I had one more call to make, my attorney. I would have felt bad for bugging the guy so late, but my father compensated him well for the inconvenience. I'd miss this part of the business, the ability to get shit done. Sal Santiago, the family lawyer since before my folks had left Sicily, answered the phone like it was a Monday morning. Gabe, I was going to call you in the morning. The paternity test we ran her in. She's your daughter. A silver lining in a cloud of shit. Thanks, but we have another problem. Other than an occasional or sigh to let me know he was on the line, Sal remained quiet while I gave him the rundown of Chantal's latest bullshit. I'm putting security on Maggie. And Joe's kids? He perked up a bit, but I suspected it had more to do with him representing my mother in her custody case than helping me out. Your father took the guards off them a couple of months ago. If they're in danger because of the threat to Miss Guthrie... You're tap-dancing into conflict of interest territory, Sal. My concern is for the children. I counted to 5 to clear my head. It didn't work. The only kid you need to worry about right now is Ella. I want Chantal's parental rights terminated by the end of the month. These things take time, Gabe. I filed the motion to establish legal paternity. Now we wait. Will the court speed things up now that she's made threats against innocent people? We have to be careful. The judge may not look favorably on you living with Miss Guthrie. I could make the case if you two were married, or even engaged. He went quiet for a few seconds. Have you considered handling this the old world way? I pinched the bridge of my nose. Was he seriously suggesting I order a hit on Ella's mother? That's not an option. Get this done, Sal. Legally. I'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't take her calls, or delete any of her messages. Understood. Praying I'd made the right decision, I shoved the phone into my pocket and went to find Maggie.